sale. Going on now at Stevens Greenhouse and Floral, the final days of our holiday clearance sale. Going on now at Stevens Greenhouse and Floral, the final days of our holiday clearance sale. Going on now at Stevens Greenhouse and Floral, the final days of our holiday clearance sale. Going on now at Stevens Greenhouse and Floral, the final day clearance sale. Going on now at Stevens Greenhouse and Floral, the final days of our holiday clearance sale. Going on now at Stevens Greenhouse and Floral, the final days of our holiday clearance sale. Going on now at Stevens Greenhouse and Floral, the final days of our holiday clearance sale. Going on now at Stevens Greenhouse and Floral, the final days of our holiday clearance sale. Going on now at Stevens Greenhouse and Floral, the final days of our holiday clearance sale.
City Council for January 6, 2021 to order. I'll leave ourselves.
lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item, approval of minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Been moved by Russ, seconded by Dan. Discussion. Questions been called for to approve the December 16th, 2020 regular meeting minutes. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. I take that as unanimous. Next item is petition communications. We had a donation, and on one side is from the Bicentennial Apartments for $1,000 to go to the Volunteer Fire Department, Public Library. And then on the back, put a letter to them thanking them for the donation. Oh, also the bus, too, or, yeah, city bus. So we'll move on, just like appreciate them for doing that. Next one, mayor's report. This one is to approve or deny. I went through, did work. Hopefully I answered the questions that I could find that was brought up during the meeting. And then I put in my position on what we should do. So now would be the time to either approve or deny my recommendation to continue as a member of the City County Health Board.
Move to approve. Second.
Second.
It's been moved by Dan, and let's let Rich will have the second. Any discussion on it?
Call for the question.
Question's been called for to approve that was approval, right? To approve the mayor's recommendation to continue as a member of the City County Health Board. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. I take that as unanimous.
This is a pretty good example of how the government's supposed to work. You bring out the facts, you review them all, and you come up with a common sense answer. This was a good example of that. Thank you all who participated.
Since Mr. Hand had an opportunity to comment, I'd like to comment.
Okay?
I believe that's an inaccurate statement. If anything, it's an example of how government doesn't work. To waste all of this time over this issue in the middle of a pandemic, a point of spiking where the virus is even becoming potentially more virulent, is an example of at the very least waste of time, and at the worst, poor government.
Thank you. I heard Mary Jo, I think, correct?
Thank you. I too have a question about Mr. Hand's comment. I went back and looked at, reread your recommendation that you be granted the ability to quit the City County Health Board. And I wished that you would have answered those questions. What has changed? The questions that you answered, and I don't understand why you even answered those questions. If you were going to recommend that we not quit, I didn't ever understand why you wanted the ability to quit the board. You mentioned 3 things in your original request, but you didn't answer those tonight or in your statement.
Didn't know that I had 3 things. On that, I thought I had just 2, and I removed 1 that night, so we only had 1.
Oh, those were the things that you wanted to accomplish, and one was to take away the designation of emergency medical.
And I pulled that.
Right. But one of the reasons that you talked about were that the city, county health department, that it was your thought that the city, county health board might in the future create mandates that were even more stringent than the governor's mandates, and that you wanted the ability to quit if that happened.
Yes. So
Has
what do you
that
want me to do
changed?
next?
Has that changed?
Well, as I said in this, I believe they are working much better, all as one, as a team. And I don't believe that was happening before, in my opinion.
So is your opinion that they might create more stringent mandates because they weren't working together as a team?
Yeah, that's what I said.
How are they working better as a team? I guess I don't,
How?
yeah.
Well, we had much better discussions, I thought. We covered the area, we spent hours longer on these now than before. Before, I didn't really think we had much of a discussion. They had their own opinion, off they went. And I believe they're actually now listening and taking other factors into consideration. The City County Health Board is not just made up to take whatever the medical profession says to do. That's one part of it. They are supposed to listen to that, but they're also supposed to weigh other factors in for their decision. Like, are they going to kill the whole economic structure of the system? You don't want to try to stop something just to destroy something else.
Right, I guess I haven't heard, in the last 2 months, I haven't heard any discussion in a city county health board meeting, economics or business. I mean, that just hasn't been a subject.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's
the problem.
And that's because they didn't put a motion on to be more stringent. That discussion would have entered in then. So you're wanting us to remove ourselves from the board is what you're asking?
No, I never understood why you wanted to remove yourself from the board or remove the city from the board. I don't understand.
Because your questions are not going that way. I've already answered that.
I didn't understand why you wanted to leave. I don't understand why you're choosing to stay. I'm glad that you're choosing that, but
Well, I can't help it, you don't understand.
yeah.
Are we ready to move? Okay. Next item, reports of officers, boards of the city, library board, Mr. Kenworthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did have a meeting, but I did not agenda. And it was that the board was not on tonight, so don't really have anything to report.
Okay, we'll get it next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney, Mr. Dolan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have been real busy the last 2 weeks with working on things for the water line, working with the chief engineer. Had a meeting with one of the landowners this morning with regard to working up some easement agreements. We hope to have that done by Friday with that particular landowner. We're still waiting on some more information from the surveyor that's going to be for the engineer. to finish some of the actual easement documents, the easement work itself. As for the criminal side of things, you know, I did hear Chief Iverson on the radio yesterday, I believe it was, and Duke and Kerr, we've seen a lot more DUIs. I don't know quite why that is, but we just have a lot more people driving drunk. And I've also seen an inordinate amount of domestics as well. I think people are sick of being with each other, and I don't, it's just, you know, I've said that before, but I think to me, it's very notable. I've never seen it, you know, this bad. Not necessarily here, but it's in general, the trend. We've had lots of changes to plea hearings before the city court. So the work keeps coming in and it keeps getting resolved in ordinary course of business. I do want to mention briefly that the victim witness advocate that we have the relationship with Kayla is doing some great work for our office, and really appreciative of the feedback I get from her, that Deb gets back from her, and to have her as a resource to help us with some of these things, particularly with some of these restitution issues that we've had lately, has been really a great benefit. We may be needing to have some jury trials in the next couple of months. I do have some concerns vis-a-vis how we can accommodate that with the current pandemic. That's just something to think about. We may have to move it to another location, I don't know yet. Or it may just resolve itself, I just don't know. But just something I want to make the council aware of. And lastly, I received word late last week that all the claims against the city were dismissed in the Saxon case. So unless there's an appeal filed, I think we should be out of that one. And there may be an appeal filed, I don't know yet.
Any questions? Thank you. Planning Board, Mr. Hand.
No meeting, no report.
Thank you. Zoning Board. Let's do Mr. Graham today.
Before you will find a set of minutes for November 24th, 2020. I ask for your approval.
Move to approve. Second. It's been moved by Dan, seconded by Bill. Discussion.
Call for the question.
Did you say call for the question? Okay, didn't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Question to be called for to accept the November 24th, 2020 meeting minutes of the zoning board. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
As you see,
All those opposed say nay.
as you see, we are continuing our stride towards zoning. Everything needs to be zoned. And we're improving a few little things. Making sure everybody's following the zoning as close as you can. Any questions? I guess I might want to make one. We were supposed to actually have a zoning meeting originally for Tuesday to deal with the marijuana issue. And we got a letter of opinion. I'm sure everybody read the letter of opinion from the city attorney. Or maybe no one's read it yet. But kind of says maybe we don't have much that we can say about where they sell real marijuana at. So we'll have to wait for further guidance on that.
I think that's going to be placed on the next zoning, right?
Yeah, it's on the agenda for the next zoning meeting on the 12th.
Okay.
And Jim will be there for any questions on it to see what we should do,
Okay.
if anything.
That concludes my report. If there's no more questions.
Just a comment, Mr. Graham. I do think that the marijuana issue needs to be explored. So I'm glad it's been put on the next agenda. The main thing I'm concerned about is it looks like you want a blanket, you can't do it at all, you have to hold a referendum. But there's another section in there that says that you can regulate, but it can't be unduly burdensome. And I have no idea what unduly burdensome means, to what degree it is unduly burdensome. So I'm gonna try to reach out to the League of Towns and Cities. They're obviously starting a late legislative session. They're gonna be very busy. I may not get anywhere with it, but I think it's worth it with the follow-up, to try to find out what their thoughts are.
Mr. Villa?
Yes,
Mr. Villa?
yes, I hear you, Mr. Wassel.
How are you this evening? Is it clear to you under that, how that mechanism would work as far as the referendum process?
Well, that seems to be a little clearer in terms of if you want to blanket ban on the sale, possession of marijuana in the city. That, the way in which you accomplish that, the vehicle in which you accomplish that is spelled out. It's less clear as to what's an unduly burdensome regulation that the city could enact. These zoning regulations are for health, safety, and welfare, so, can you enact a regulation that says no in the central business district and yes somewhere else? I don't know. It's not exactly, you're not eliminating the use or the business, so I don't know if you could say it was unduly burdensome. But that's something I'd like to bounce off some people from the League of Towns and Cities.
Is the referendum process though pretty open-ended in terms of what it could do?
I think it just pertains to banning recreational marijuana within a given jurisdiction.
Could that jurisdiction be the entire city?
In theory, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Conclude my report. Thank you. Next item, Directors of Operations, Mr. Hazelacre.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things. Working on, that'll come before you will be a bus coordination plan for the year 2021. That plan will be in the next packet or next meeting with the idea that we'll have a public hearing on February 3rd with your approval of, and the minutes on February 17th. That's something we have to do every year for our bus programs. And so that's coming up. I know we've gone through zoning and planning. We're having those, every year we're required to have a meeting in February. I'll get my months correct here. January to basically reorganize. And we're doing Board of Adjustments tomorrow night, zoning next Tuesday, and hopefully planning next Thursday, if possible. And with that, also with the planning is, we just got back the survey from Jeremy Fadness, who's preparing the survey for our CIP, and we'll review it that night and then hopefully get it kicked out within the week after that. So that's coming down the road. The Christmas lights will be coming down probably next week. We're talking about doing it this week, but the guys saw a UFO Monday morning and that scared them, so they'd like to wait a week until the UFO's out of the way. That's their story. So, and then quickly back to the bus. Got our final figures in the first part of the week. We had 6,771 riders, which is down 3,334, but the impacts because of COVID. And then also, so it's lost about 33% of our riders. So that's, but it seems to be picking up. First of the year, I think Glenn said he had over 50 people today. He was in the 40s yesterday. So that's a good way to start the year. I think we could see more people using it as the vaccination comes out and people are going to be more comfortable with being out. So I see that as a great improvement. It's not, the decline is not a reflection of the program or what Glenn's doing. He's doing a great job. And people are very appreciative of what he does. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Hazelbaker,
Yes, sir.
how are you?
Good, how are you?
Pretty good.
Good.
I know you're busy. So I just want to use the occasion to remind you, I'm still waiting on those measurements relative to Washington Street and the lanes and the parking space.
Okay? I understand. There are other things that are more pressing for me though than that, but I will get to that before the next big snowstorm.
I'll try to be patient.
Okay? Thank you, I appreciate that.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Next one, Chief Cagerson's not on. Fire Department, Fire Chief Closey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We went through, this last week, we met with the ISO and had our 5-year audit. And we will know within probably 60 days where we came out there. We have been a 4.4Y, which is a really, really good rating. I was talking to her and she was telling me that most departments with, most volunteer departments, cities are 8, a 6 or an 8, so we're pretty good right there. We'll see what happens. We've got there's two things also that we can't control, and that is the testing and the flow of the hydrants, and also the dispatch center. And I know the dispatch is working on adding dispatchers, and so we've got 2 dispatchers on duty at the busy times. So, but I felt it went really well. So, other than that, we had a pretty quiet December, whatever this month is. Had a quiet December. So, and I will get a report, hopefully year-end report by the February meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any questions? May I be excused?
Yeah.
I've got to go get my wife, she's got to get to the hospital for surgery, so.
Okay, good luck.
Thanks.
See, court's not here. City Treasurer, Ms. Kip.
In your packets are the bank rep and tax report and water report for October.
Move to approve.
Second.
Been moved by Bill, seconded by Dan, discussion.
So did I hear that correctly, that these are for October?
They are.
Okay.
By November, they're in the docket for your next meeting.
Okay.
They're done. And hopefully we'll get December again. I didn't have a good one.
Call for the question.
Call for the question. Question's been called for to approve the cash summary report for October 2020, the bank reconciliation report for October 2020, and the Stockman Bank collateral report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Take that as unanimous. Anything else you want to say? Karen? Any questions for Karen? Okay, we're moving on. Tree board, Ms. O'Rourke.
We had a meeting last night, so I put the minutes in, and so they'll be in your packet for the next
I was
meeting.
actually fans for the last night's meeting.
We did, we had been the recipient of several fair-sized grants lately. So we worked real hard last night on trying to get those scheduled out. I think it'll come out to 30 to 40,000 in this kind of cycle. And in terms of grants and, so I think, and we'll probably have that much again this year. So this will be our biggest year yet.
Oh, good. Okay. Next item is reports of standing committees of the City Council. First one, Judiciary, Mr. Nye.
Yes, before you, you have the minutes of December 15th. Ask for your approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Been moved by Bill, seconded by Don. Discussion?
That's the question.
Question's been called for to approve the December 15, 2020 meeting minutes of the Judiciary Committee. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Take it as unanimous.
We're still working on it, slowly but surely.
We'll get to it in a month or so. Or 3. Next item, Finance Committee, Mr. Hand.
Before you have the minutes from our December 31st meeting, would like your approval?
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved by Dan, seconded by Bill. Discussion?
I was just wondering, I noticed that it seems every month there are a couple large checks that go out to Lee's Office Supply and Equipment. Do we have like a contract with Lee's or something to
Copier maintenance.
copier maintenance? And so, is that like a $10,000, or what is that per year?
And it's not, it isn't this place specific. Are you talking Lee's office, city? Is what you're talking? Because this month, it's the library and the police.
I noticed that every month there is 2 transactions that are of fair size to Lee's Office Supply. And I wondered if we had a contract with them to take care of our printers or something.
You don't have it on, you have to turn it on. Underneath, just push the button underneath in the box right there till it goes yellow. Okay, now you're ready.
I'm not sure about a contract, but I know the police order their copier supplies or their printer supplies, and the library does as well. Contracts are through, what is that other place?
360 Solutions.
Yeah, 360 Solutions.
Right.
But I don't think that we have contracts with police.
Okay.
And they're usually not, I mean, those would be bigger, I think, than what you're seeing.
Okay.
Like last month, it was only $300 from Lee's office.
And if you'd like to come in, I can show you specifically what is being purchased from Lee's.
Well, and I wondered about, is that Black Mountain software, is that something we pay like once a year? Or is that every month,
The Black Mountain is pretty much once a year.
Yeah, it is.
so every month we pay the 18,000?
No,
No,
that's the once a year.
That's the once a year.
yeah.
I mean, that
Um,
$18,326. So that's once a year that we pay that.
Yes.
I'll call the question on the meeting minutes.
I have a question about the copier.
So we aren't at the copier quite yet. That's coming up.
This is just for minutes right now. Then it'll come up on the copier in a second. If you're talking about item 5,
Yes, I thought the approval was for the entire package, but I apologize.
no, just the minutes this time. Now, question to call for. Question to call for to approve the December 31st, 2020 meeting minutes of the Finance Committee. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, all those opposed say nay. I take that as unanimous.
We have 2 other action items on here.
We got more than that.
Well, that's true. First is to approve the line item budget, the fund summary, and the claims, as well as approve budget versus actual, the first 4.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved by Bill, seconded by Raymond. Discussion.
Call for the question then.
Question's been called for to approve the line item budget report for December 2020, the fund summary for claims for December 2020, claims by vendor report for December 2020, and the budget versus actual report for December 2020. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed say nay. I take that as unanimous.
Okay, the first item 5 on here is to approve the recommendation of contract with Jackson, Murdo, and Grant as bond counsel for the Edward Street repair loan. The Finance Committee suggests a do pass.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved by Dan, seconded by Bill. Discussion.
So, Mr. Mayor, has the city attorney had a chance to take a look at this?
Well, let's ask him.
Yes, I have. I find no irregularity in it. It is the standard engagement letter that has been used by this firm in past bond issues with the city.
Okay. Any other question or discussion?
Call for the question then.
Questions we called for to approve the recommendation of the contract with Jackson, Myrtle, and Grant, TC as bond counsel for the Idle Street repair loan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. I take that as unanimous.
The second item 5, which actually should be item 6, Mr. Schwant missed that one so far, but okay.
No, I saw
He
it.
would have caught it.
Is to approve the recommendation to purchase a used copier, scanner, fax machine from 360 Solutions for the city attorney's office.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved by Dan, seconded by Bill. Discussion. Now you can ask if you want, Rich.
Well, I suppose the questions will go to Mr. Ham, if you're the lead on this. And or Mr. Bill. The existing copy arrangement for the city attorney, exactly what is it and what is the status of the equipment that's being used? Secondly, this proposal is for us, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, so bear with me, Test Alpha machine. Did this come through Office Solutions per se without them? Did they basically select it for us, or was there a selection procedure that several others were considered, and if so, how? Thirdly, it's shown as a used machine. Is it used refurbished, or is it just used status unknown? And if, as far as its used status, do we have any idea as far as copier counts or any other means of determining what its use was, how used it is? And I guess that's my main lines of of interest.
Okay, you're taxing my short-term memory, I must confess. But I'll try to answer your questions in order. The first one is the present copier up there is outdated and we're unable to get parts for it. It's no longer being made. So that, and the copier quality has started to suffer. What was your second question? I'm sorry. I told you, you exceeded my short-term memory.
That's refurbished or used?
Oh, this is a used machine that's been proposed by 360.
I'm sorry,
This is a used machine that's been proposed by 360 for our benefit.
so it was selected by 360.
Correct.
Okay, do you know if they considered any others or gave us an idea of what other alternatives would look like in terms of pricing, performance, abilities, anything?
Not that I'm aware of. Mr. Dolan, can you help me out with that one?
I can't, other than that, I believe these machines were used by the state government in Helena, and they don't have a whole lot of copies on them. That they go through the entire machine before they will certify it as a refurbished machine.
So it is refurbished?
That's my understanding, Mr. Wassley, yes.
They are offering a service contract with it, and of course, the more things that need to be repaired under service contract, the more expensive it is for them. So they like to get that stuff out of the way to begin with. As far as the number of copies, the closest we come up with is about 6,000 paper copies a year, but there is quite a bit of scanning and electronic copies do go out of the office to various attorneys and other places.
Well, I thank you for that information, but my interest as far as the numbers were to evaluate how used the machine was, whether or not we knew what the count was on the copier before it was refurbished as far as copies, et cetera, any other values that we'd have in terms of the maintenance of the copier and what its current status was.
I don't believe they gave us any copier count numbers as far as how well used it was. Case of Terra is usually pretty good stuff. As you can see, the rate, so there's pretty good cost savings for us in this case. We're only going to pay $1,900 for it.
And from what I understand, it's a low copy, so they didn't put a few thousand. Don't know exactly. It's been pulled from, like Mr. Dolman said, from the state. It was, they would replace, this company goes through and replaces with the state every, I think it's 3 years. So it doesn't matter how much it's used, they just put a new one up there in that place and take their used one out. And then they sell it to other people that use. And this was, I was told, one of the lower copied ones, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I do have some questions.
Can I ask one more, Mary Jo?
Sure.
Okay. Devil's advocate. I've been out of the area where I'd be up to date on it, in any sense of a word, on office equipment machines for 13 years, so that means I'm pretty obsolete. So just devil's advocate, as a private party, I can go out and buy a new cube multi machine that will copy, scan, fax, what else, whatever functions, for roughly $100. So is the market still that different in terms of business machines in order to just provide a working height machine that underneath has a bunch of plastic and space for paper? That's my question.
Okay, what you'll probably find is like buying a Hewlett Packard printer. It costs you $100. And each print cartridge costs you about $60, it seems like. That's where they make their money. Same thing with small machines, that's where they make the money, is on the ink. Ink is included in this particular purchase. Also, the durability of it, when your small printer goes to pot, you throw it away. This one we can fix. So there's obvious cost savings there.
I'm looking through all the tech stuff here on the page. Is this a laser machine?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's my questions. Thank you very much for the answers.
Mary Jo, you had a question?
I do. This isn't the normal way we usually get these. Is this going to come out of the city attorney's budget? There is a line item for copier and computer supplies for $1,200.
Yes.
So he would just be $700 short.
Yes.
And it would come out of where?
Well, one of the line items there, don't know which one for sure.
You realize part of that $1,200 budget he's already spent maintaining his old one. This has been since July.
This one says the available appropriation is $1,200.
That's correct. That's always what was budgeted to begin with, not what's left in the account.
Oh, okay.
As I understood it anyway. Was that, Mr. Dolan, I assume you bought some paper, et cetera.
Oh, yeah, we had paper. I think that the 360 guy was up to work on it. That's when he gave us the bad news. It was a couple of months ago, but yeah.
Mrs. Pierce, do you have anything to weigh in for us on this item?
And she's the one that mainly talked with him.
Hi guys, yes, I visited with him, and our machine is putting lines through our documents that we can't have documents with lines going through them and such, and it's so old that there's no parts they can get for it any longer. And so when he approached us about some machines, like Mr. Dolan said, from the state, he had one that did not have very many copies made on it, and if you notice what the original price of that machine is, it's a lot more than what they're asking us for, and it had not much use on it. But this also has a service contract that will go with it also, so they can keep servicing it and cleaning it. But we do, like Mr. Wassel was saying, that you can get machines for a lot less, but he doesn't realize that we have an automatic feeder on it, because we have a lot of documents that go through that machine that have to be scanned out to people. We try not to send things by mail to save postage, so we send everything email as much as we can. So a lot of stuff is getting scanned, and you've got to have a great scanner and a good scanner to do that.
I was asking the questions as devil's advocate.
Debbie, is the maintenance contract on that for 1 year? Is that included in the $1,900?
He just said a maintenance contract goes with it, but I don't know if that's for a whole year or what. He didn't break that down. Mayor, do you see that on your
It's
estimate?
0.012 cents per copy. It's not a yearly fee, it's a per copy fee, every time it flashes.
The 1,900 is to purchase the printer, copier, scanner.
Right.
But then on the maintenance is the .012 per copy.
Okay.
Okay. All right. And we can call them any time, but we don't ever use them. This other machine, we've only used them twice in about 3 years. So.
I have one other question, if you could indulge me.
Okay.
When I was in business for myself, I had a laser printer. And I loved it, but what I eventually ran into was and I forget in what form they were, but as updates from the manufacturer would come for the brain on the machine, I would update it and they would have to be compatible with whatever was going on with Windows at that time for the latest updates on that. And it eventually got to a point where basically I ended up with a brick because there were no further ability of the Windows systems to talk to the NEC systems and work with whatever updates were needed. So my question is, with that in mind, is there a way to evaluate before we buy this, what the expected lifespan of this thing would be in terms of the upgradable technology before it would become a brick?
Well, how this thing's happened, the printer that they're using right now started in our office down here. And then once we got a new one, not really a new one, I don't think we've ever bought a new one. We've always bought it just like these. They're used. Most of them probably did come from the state when they get rid of them. And that's, so when we got ours, then this one that we got pushed to the court. And then when we get another one down here, then it gets pushed to the court, and then the court one gets pushed up to the city attorney. So this one that they have now has went through they're on the third owner side from the state. I'm assuming this one came from the state a long time ago. So I think it's every 3 years they update, so you're looking at one that's about 10 years old now. And that's one of the reasons why the machine doesn't work as well and you can't get parts anymore. It's too old. So it's still working, it's just not working very good. Like they said, lines through it, we can't get toner cartridges now for it. You just can't buy the parts anymore.
So I understand why the existing equipment has to be replaced pronto. But I guess my question to you, Mr. Mayor, is since you're equipment expert, hopefully as far as IT, what's your best guess in terms of the expected lifespan for this machine, give or take a century?
10,
Before it becomes a brick?
pretty much.
I didn't catch that.
10 years.
10 years? Okay. Thank you.
So, and also on Mary Jo's question, you were looking at the correct, this is where I would put it, at least, the correct line item, if you look into the finance committee, page 3, she's on the correct one, the 392 object code. The thing is that there's $1,200 in there and there's zero been spent. Okay. And so, although this is more than that, I'm not disagreeing, but this was not expected that we'd have to be buying a new printer scanner now. So this is also asking you to agree to amend the budget when we come around in a few months to amend the budget. Because this was not an expected item when we did the budget in September.
And therein is my questions that it's almost every month that we have unexpected things that we need to come up with money for. And I looked in here and I couldn't see what are the needs of the city attorney's office, how many copies do they usually have per month, how many other functions do they use. It sounds like they use scanning a great deal. Where exactly is the money going to come from? And you've answered that we have to do a budget amendment for this. And
we would amend the budget mainly, but I would probably at this point, if we can, at that point, take it from his budget and one that's not used as often. It's been used once, maybe twice on my terms. And that's $398 contract services. If I'm not incorrect on that, Jim. I think it's only been used twice. Or maybe just once. This is when you have to hire another attorney because he's conflicted on some case.
And you could take the other $700 out of there, out of the
hoping, yes.
$398. Okay.
And there's other ones around, if you see on how I do a budget, I've already also told you on budgets when we do it that I don't. I try not to be, I try to be more, I say we're gonna spend more than we really do. So we won't be surprised and we won't be looking for money down the road. And just right off the bat, I can tell you right now, we put in for general elections and we're not gonna have general elections this year. Okay, so that's 5,600, it's already zero and it's gonna stay zero for this year. Next year, I'm assuming now, we put this in here for one reason on the general elections. I had no idea there's gonna be a primary. Well, that depends down to how many people's gonna run for mayor. You know, if there's like 4 or more, then I think they have a primary. Then we will have to be paying for elections. Don't know what it costs. The general election costs about that much, $5,600, $6,000 to do the general election. Primary might be the same, might not be. You know.
Okay, and if we did have a primary, it would be in this budget year.
That's correct, because it'd be in June,
Right.
or no. No, primary's in September, I think.
September.
So it won't be this, so this one, that money will be there, 5,600. I was thinking wrong. The filing date closes in June, if you want to be on the ballot, but somewhere in June. But the actual election primary will be in September, if there is one. So that would be next year's budget, that we'd have to have all that on. So right there, that's some money that's not going to be spent this year, that we can, well, it won't be spent for that purpose, another way of saying it.
Well, it answers my question that we would take the $1,900 from both 398 and 392. I didn't, I mean, it seems like a lot of machine for, you know, that office. I guess I didn't, did you have some numbers, Mr. Hand, on what how many copies they traditionally do per month? And how many other functions per month that office does?
We did not calculate in what the scanning load was. That we had no way to put a number on that. The copies per year, you can tell about how much paper they use, which turned out to about 6,000 pieces of paper. So that's what number we had to run with.
So 500 copies per month. Yeah.
Probably.
Debbie and Jim probably have a better. Does that sound about right, Debbie?
Yes, that's about right. We have tried to cut down the copies just because of the expense. The mayor wants us to cut things, and we try very hard. And the scanning is unreal. I do all my discoveries to the other attorneys through scanning, and to individuals. Everything's scanning and email. So it's important that we have a good machine, though. But this still is. The machine we're getting is not a big fancy machine like the city hall has down below. It's just an ordinary machine, but I think it's important our office has something that we can use to send out good documents.
I assume you get a decent amount of fax traffic also.
No, we don't have a fax number, so we do have to go down and use the city hall's fax. But this machine does have a fax capability, so we can hook it up so we wouldn't have to go downstairs. We're going up and down the stairs several times, you know, to get those faxes, but I guess it takes the weight off me, right?
The other thing to realize too is that the fax is becoming a dinosaur as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that reduces text.
Like, most people are sending PDFs these days, and this machine will handle that.
Right.
Just a housekeeping, is the motion to approve for agenda item 2 amended Roman 6?
Yes.
Can I ask one question, Rick?
I didn't hear you,
This
Matt.
question is predominantly for Jim and Debbie. I notice when I read through the description of this, it appears that this is merely a black and white printer. It does have the ability to scan color. But are there ever any documents that either of you have to print something in color in which this thing's not going to be?
This again, where the bulk of what we need is a black and white copy. If we do have something that we need to print in color, we do have a separate color printer available upstairs. If we needed to print something that was in a larger paper size, we could use the copier, the printer downstairs for that, such as say an exhibit for a trial. Other than that, I actually prefer the black and white because I can tell the original from the copy.
Okay. I just didn't want us to buy it and then find out that we didn't really find correctly. Oh, this is only black and white.
That brings me to my last question. Is there other copying resources available to the city attorney's office? Like, are there other copiers upstairs? Are there other copiers that are?
None upstairs that I remember or know of. That's the only one upstairs. We have this one down here with the judges and then ours. But they can't print from there because they're on a different network. So they can't print, they can't scan to their computers. Like everybody down in our office, you can throw a document in there, hit scan, hit the place, the computer you want to send it to, and then it sends it to us.
Right, right.
They can't do that from a downstairs printer, either one of them, because they're on a different network up there.
Is that usual for the different offices to not be on the same network in the city?
Well, the city attorney would like to be on a separate one because of what he handles. Security. If he was on ours, I could get on and look at anything I want on his. Or anybody can.
Okay, good.
Are the brands Kyocera and Tezcalca, are they known brands or are we buying Yugo?
Oh no, they're known and it's been here. I mean, that brand has been used by the city for a long time, and I can't say I've seen anyone, but I mean, everything you have a little problem, it gets fixed, but none of them's been bad. It's just when we get older, we pass it down to other ones, but this brand is pretty solid.
Thank you.
Call for the question.
Question's been called for to approve the recommendation to purchase that color copier scanner machine from 360 Solutions for the city attorney office. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. I take that as unanimous.
That completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Fire and Order Committee, Mr. Schaefer.
No meeting, no report.
Health and Welfare, Mr. Schwant.
No meeting, no report. City, county, health board will meet in 2 weeks. They'll be posted.
Yep. Cemetery Committee, Mr. Kenworthy.
No meeting, no report.
Parks Committee, Ms. O'Rourke.
No, we meet, I think on the 27th of this month.
City Hall Committee, Mr. Graham.
No meeting, no report.
Street Alley Committee, Mr. Nye.
Oh,
Yeah.
You just, before, we have one item to approve. It's the infrastructure agreement between the city of Dillon and Eric and Elisa.
I have a motion.
Gwendolyn's West Side Edition.
Move to approve.
Second.
I think I have a motion first.
Okay, what was the motion first?
My motion was to table the agreement for the moment. And the reason is that it needs more supporting documentation before it's again presented to the council.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Discussion.
What supporting documentation are you in reference to?
Do you want me
Well, I
to
guess
try
I
to
can-
list mine?
Pardon?
I have a list of questions that I really need to have answered before I could vote in favor of this document.
Oh, questions is different than supporting documents.
Well, I think that these are questions that are not, I mean, we need somebody to answer these questions.
You might be here, but that's different than tabling it because we don't have supporting
I don't believe
documents.
there's supposed to be discussion on tabling. Tabling.
Well, that's true. There's in the table, there's a question though, just ask why, but you're right. So it's been moved, table has been moved and seconded. So all those in favor of tabling,
Can we have discussion of the motion?
no.
Tabling it.
Not on tables.
No.
Tables have no discussion.
Exactly.
Okay.
So all those in favor, or all those in favor of tabling, say aye.
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 And I take that as Rich and Mary Jo, correct? And the others that said aye,
Nay.
and then now nays?
Nay.
Nay. I take that as the rest. Did Matt say nay, or did you say?
No.
Okay, so I got Matt, Russ is,
Nay.
okay. And I heard Bill for sure was nay, and Dan was nay, right?
Yes.
How about Raymond? And Don?
Nay.
Okay, tables fails. So we're back again to a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved by Russ, seconded by Bill. Discussion. That's to approve it.
So, Mr. Mayor or Mr. Hand or whoever, chairman of this committee,
Mr. Nye.
Mr. Nye, do you have any idea what is the cost estimate of the owner shall mutually engage with the city of Dillon in a civil engineering registered by the state of Montana to prepare detailed plans and specifications for the complete installation of all improvements. So just to come up with the plan and the specifications, do you have any idea what that cost is?
My statement would be, to get a surveyor, which would probably be, that would be equally shared. And that, I would say, $2,000, $3,000. So about $1,500 to the city on that. To do the street, I would say probably about $2,000. So we're talking about $3,500.
To do the plan and the specifications for all of the improvements you believe is going to be
No, not all.
$3,500?
City, you asked for the city.
No, well, I
don't
said,
really care no offense what I'm gonna say, I don't really care what it costs him.
Well, no, I'm asking for in number 23, we are committing the city to split the cost of coming up with a plan for the specifications and the complete installation of all improvements in accordance with city's engineering standards and specifications. So you believe that plan will be approximately $6,000 and the city's portion of it will be $3,000?
Somewhere in that ballpark.
How many miles of road are we asking the city to build?
3 blocks of 250 each feet, not miles.
66 feet times 4, so it's like 1,200 feet.
I'd say about 1,200, I'd say. Feet. Which is,
Okay, so 3 blocks, let's,
Quarter of a mile.
yeah, that'd be, yeah, I think it's even less than a quarter.
so the 3 blocks of Railroad Avenue?
No,
Or
no, we're not doing
the 3
Railroad.
blocks of
Rife Street,
Rife?
and then 200 and some feet of Franklin, and 200 some feet of Kent.
200, so 3 blocks of 250 feet, and it would be by 24 feet or by 25 feet?
66.
Oh, the width is 66.
Oh, 66,
But
okay.
that counts sidewalks and boulevards, so and we're not doing those. That will be done when the development or building, whatever you want to call it, goes on.
Okay, so 200 and 200 for Kent. So,
And why I said the engineering is not as very much money is there's very little design that he does. The streets are all laid out. Those are all known. The only thing we do need is a surveyor to say, those are the pins, those are the spots that are the corners of the street. So then we know where to put the street. And then the surveyor will tell us the height. That's our most important part. The height of the streets will then lay out how far down he has to dig for the water sewer. What do we have to bring in? Do we have to lower the street in some part? Do we have to raise it in some others?
so
To build
you're
the
talking
street.
like that the city would build these roads?
That's correct, we are. There are streets.
And I agree that, yeah, there are streets, but the city can't build roads. I mean, that's not what the city does. We can barely we've never gotten all of the streets even kind of cleaned in one season, much less build 1,200 feet of 66-foot wide street. We are, by signing this, we are telling the people of Dillon that they are responsible for building this much road. And this could be $1 million for all we know, or it could be $750,000. And we have no way of paying for that except to raise taxes. And I think before we saddle the people of Dillon with this kind of potential expense, we need to know what it actually is going to be.
And may I answer that? We're not going to that much detail on this street. The plan is, once we get the height, we're going to have a grader out there and we'll grade about 1 foot off and we'll throw fabric down, the structural fabric, and then we will put in road mix, and then we're done.
I know, and that you make that sound like it's easy to build roads.
It is.
It isn't easy to build
It
roads.
is. I can tell you, we've done numerous ones. It isn't that hard to build roads. It might take some time, don't get me wrong, but it's not that hard. Our street guys are more than capable of doing this, and that's who's gonna do it, our street people.
Mr. Mayor, we haven't ever gotten all of the potholes filled in a season, much less ask the street department to build streets. This needs to be teched out to R.E. Miller or an organization that this is what they do every single day, so that good, reliable roads are built.
Well, see, now you're starting to really be insulting to the street people.
Well,
We've done it. First off, you said you have never done pothole fills. Every year we go through and we fill every pothole we can find. Now, is there one or two that we miss? It's very possible we miss them. But all in all, I believe we get every one that we find. So don't say that we don't do potholes every year. That is not a true statement. We fix streets every year. We
don't
take
build
them down.
roads. We do not build roads.
Yes, we do. I don't know how you say we don't. Every city in this state that's a certain size or bigger does their own streets. If you don't believe it, just go up to Butte, to Helena, to Bozeman, to Missoula, to Great Falls, to Billings,
What
to
roads
Haver,
have
to
been built?
Hamilton. They all fix their own streets. They all build their own streets.
No, they don't build their own streets.
Well, you're making a statement that you really don't have any knowledge of.
What roads have been built in the last 7 years?
Has been built by the city.
Yeah,
There's numerous ones over on the east side that we've taken all the way down, put in structural fabric.
you took
And then
in
built
that quarter of a block area and you took it down and you built it up and put some,
So it's not hard. You're making it sound like it's not hard, and it's not.
that
That
was,
is the street. The hardest part is asphalt, and I don't do asphalt. We bring in somebody that does the asphalt, and that's the hardest part of the whole street.
you were taking out part of a road that had already been built and then you
So-
refilled it.
So, there's no difference, Mary Jo.
Oh, there is.
No,
There
there's
is.
not. Well, and that's where you and I disagree, and
This is not, building roads is not an easy thing to do. I think we need to have some kind of estimate from an organization like R.E. Miller that says what the potential cost of these roads are going to be before we saddle the people with Dillon with this kind of an expense. We're just signing, if you sign this, you're signing a blank check and telling the people of Dillon that they are responsible for building these roads. And
we
you're gonna know
own-
what it's gonna cost.
And we own that street. And the owners are wanting to use that property and the street's not ready to be used. So what are we gonna do?
I think that we should go back to our extension of services plan,
But
which
this is not an
says,
extension of service, this is not a subdivision. The street's already been accepted by the city. They've accepted it, there are streets. If they're subdivisions, we have not accepted them. So those
this
two
talks
are-
about all new development.
Yeah, we haven't, but this is not new development, this is existing lots.
This is existing streets we're just never putting in, that's all they are. We're putting them in.
So
We're
they're
not
not
gonna be stuck with the cost, no matter what we do.
They're future streets.
No, they are
They've
streets.
been platted, they are streets.
They are streets.
But as far as physical world, I just went out there and looked at it this afternoon. It's rough. There are no streets there as far as the four side streets and reef. And as far as the railroad is basically a barely improved street.
I think you're misstating that. The streets are there, there's just not no gravel on the street, so if you drive on them, it's like driving down a muddy lane.
I just went out and looked at the streets.
Technically, you can drive down the streets.
Those four streets and reef physically are not there in any sense that I would classify them as streets other than just dirt paths.
You're correct, they are. We're trying to change the dirt path into the regular street. Sans the paving.
The way we've done this in the past, and I'm going to talk about Ivyville, or we do Ivyville, or we could do any of the developments that are over on that side of town.
Once again, you're talking a development. You're talking a subdivision.
No, I'm talking, the roads were built.
Ivyville is a subdivision. New addition to subdivision. Those are the ones you're
Subdivision, what's Herb's thing up there, that's a
But
subdivision, south side of
when we wanted to
subdivision.
go ahead and pave those roads and turn them into real city streets, then they did a thing about the people in that neighborhood would pay a SID, and that's how this should be done too.
And it
It
is.
should be a SID.
We're putting in the gravel, and when it hits a certain number of feet.
I'm talking about for building the roads, it should be a SID. It should
When
not
they did
be.
the SID, when they did SID 33, they had gravel roads. And then they SID it out and made it paved. New addition 34 was gravel roads.
That the developer put in.
Right, but they're all subdivisions. This is not a subdivision, this is a platted street. It is owned by the city. They want use of it.
And if they want use of it, and we want to, I think that we should applaud them and support that and create a SID and go ahead and get those roads built, but have it paid for by the people who own the land over there.
And do you know how the
because
SID, do you know how the SID works?
I do.
And how does the SID work? You get all the landowners on, that borders it, right?
Mhm.
And if you get over 50% says, no, we don't want to SID, then what happens?
It's just done.
And that's what they'll do.
Well,
So now what?
You know, they want all of Dillon to pay for their streets. And
It's
that's
Dillon
not-
Streets. They are Dillon Streets. They've been platted and owned by the city of Dillon.
What?
This is not, you cannot saddle the people of Dillon with this kind of, you have absolutely no idea what this is gonna cost.
20,000.
That's baloney.
How
Absolutely.
do you know it's baloney?
Because
How do you know?
I've called several people who build roads and said, how much does it cost to build a road per square foot? And it depends on where you're starting. When you say we're starting in a bog, it's like,
And that's not a
oh
ball.
Lord.
Mary-
This could be $1
Mary
million
Jo?
bucks.
Mary Jo,
Yes,
I sense that you and I are probably going to end up on the short end on this thing. But whenever you're ever ready for me to jump in, I'll jump in.
you can jump in, but I think that the people of Dillon are gonna wanna have a say in this before we vote on this. This is not fair to the people of Dillon. Absolutely not fair.
Okay, let's let that simmer just a minute. Did you have other questions in regards to this? Let's go on and address those as well.
Okay, so, well, okay, like those two cost estimates, both on the the 1,200 feet of roads, and on the plan itself. And then we don't have in here, there isn't any future plan of maintenance. And I think that we need to know more about that too.
Well, the future plan of maintenance is when it needs to be graded, we go grade it. If they've had enough people buy the lots, then they would do a sit and do the pavement, and we would go and take care of the pavements at that point. It's a city street, the city would take care of it, it would enter in part of, and they already pay street maintenance fees anyway. You know, so that street maintenance fee would go take care of those streets there. That's the plan. Every year we do a plan, street maintenance.
Well, I think that you are asking the people of Dillon to jump into something that is, this is a never-ending money pit.
Every street is never ending money pit. I can tell you that right now. Why do you think we're doing the money and it's taking so much work over on the east side? And I can tell you the numbers. For us to do a city block, it takes about $100,000. That's counting asphalt. Okay? Contractors would tell you it's about $200 to $250. Okay? And that's asphalted. Okay?
So, so at that, given that amount, we are talking about $1.25 to $1.5 million project.
If we're going to do the asphalt and do all the curb and gutters and all that, yes. We're not doing any of that. The owner is going to do the curb and gutter when they build the house. Or when they do the SID. The SID will pay, excuse me, the SID will pay for the curb and gutter and the pavement. The owner will do the sidewalk. When they build a house, a sidewalk will be put in there.
I'm concerned about the building of the roads. And I think that, you know, you are, we have no idea what this is going to cost. Absolutely no idea what this is going to cost.
Now you want to let Rich? Rich, you want to speak now?
Yes, I've got a series of questions, first beginning with City Attorney Dolan. Second, directed to you, Mr. Mayor. And then thirdly, possibly, Mr. Wendland, if he'd agree to accept them as questions at the microphone. Mr. Dolan, you're vastly familiar with the state of Montana statutes as they apply to subdividing property, correct?
Yeah.
Educate me. In this state, what do they say in terms of the public interest of cities and counties and in terms of off-site improvements, in terms of financing those improvements? And do those statutes get down to saying that those improvements will be funded by the developers and or some sort of shared arrangement through redevelopment districts? How is the law set up? In other words, is it open-ended, basically, that cities and counties can negotiate with developers on a shared cost arrangement for off-site sewer, water, and road improvements, etc. For the cost of those is it statutorily pretty much set up that the flow of traffic as far as the statute is intended to be that the developers are supposed to fund those costs?
Well, first of all, I guess I object as a compound question, but I'll do my best.
No, I apologize, it was a compound question, and do your best.
Sure, thank you. So a couple things. Number one, this is a unique situation because this is not a subdivision. This is platted streets that have been platted within the city of Dillon since 1910. Just never ever been developed. So it does take and Mr. Wassel, I must say that it does have shades of a subdivision development agreement. I would agree with that. I do think that the city can enter into negotiations with the developer or owner of property with regard to the best way to proceed. But, you know, the reality is right now, if I want to purchase a lot from Mr. Wendland and he wants to sell it, of course, in theory, if we struck a price, I could buy that lot and in theory could build a house there and could ask the city to put in my sewer and my water. I guess, again, circling back to the nature of compound questions, I guess what you were asking me was whether or not the city could enter into an agreement in this type of a scenario, and my answer to that is yes. The costs, however, is not something I'm going to be able to address. That's not really my forte. The question is whether or not you can do it, and I believe that you can do it.
Okay, but are the Montana statutes set so that the flow of traffic is supposed to be typically, subject to exception, that the public entities are to require the developer to pay for the off-site improvements that are associated with whatever his development is? And I realize you are referring to a technicality in terms of the 1910 original platting of these streets as far as the city of Dillon. But that's not uncommon where there will be future plans produced in terms of the developing public entity in terms of its infrastructure, and it will show those streets as streets, though they have actually never been put into place. And that's usually subject to some commercial or residential or whatever developer showing up and saying, hey, I got a plan I bought this associated property bordering the platted streets, and here's what my plans are. And in all of my experience, which wasn't in Montana, the usual direction was that the law required that the developer put those costs of those off-site improvements, and that they be incorporated in whatever financing arrangement he had schemed up and developed for making the development a financial success.
I don't know if there's a question in there.
Okay, moving on. Mr. Mayor, these streets that don't, other than railroad, which in any sense really don't exist at present and haven't existed since 1910. Why is it in the city's interest and the citizens of Dillon to put these streets in now? how does that serve the interests of Dillon overall and its citizens? I understand how it might serve Mr. Windland's interests, and I'm sympathetic to Mr. Windland. I'd like to see this project. I'd like to see the West Side Addition start to flower. But how is it in the city's interest that this part of the West Side Addition that Mr. Windland owns, how is it in the city's interest that they put in these streets?
Right now, all of the lots that are on the west side of those 3 blocks are taxed as vacant lots, egg lots. And so they're, no offense, pennies on the dollar, okay, because they're egg. If we get a street in there, now it turns from egg into property that can be taxed, especially when they put houses, it will be residential. Not that I know it's zoned in, but it'll be residential, which will increase quite a bit the taxes coming into the city of Dillon. That's the big reason for doing this. Second reason is it's a city street. And there's quite a few city streets around that are gravelled. That's all I'm going to do for years, take it to gravel, not curb and gutter, and not asphalt. That would be a SID when they're ready to do the SID. And this contract signs them up to do a SID. It gives a number when that SID will automatically kick in. They don't get to protest it then. They have to do it. So that big chunk of money you're talking about, Mary Jo, does not enter in. It's a SID will be covered. So they will be paying for that part. We are getting it so the street's usable for them. And that's what they're doing. So those are the benefits to the city.
Oh, okay, in my experience in terms of a similar situation in which a developer wanted to go to a public entity and say, hey, I want to develop this property, these streets are going to need, for access, are going to need to be established. For the city, if they could argue that they should participate in the funding because through some redevelopment agreement or whatever, that they should participate in that funding scheme with the developer, it would be typically because the city's saying this is part of an area, not just the portion that's controlled by the developer, but the overall area, that these streets would contribute a public benefit by being established to the overall surrounding area of this development. In this case, I don't see that. And in asking you that question and your response being simply that it's in the public interest because ultimately it would improve the tax base, I'm not sure in my mind that that's sufficient reason for to justify the city working out this shared arrangement with Mr. Windland for the cost of the off-site improvements for this development. And I understand you say that the street improvements, that's all the city's responsible for, correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
And
with a few other nuts and bolts thrown in.
some
But
storm drains.
for the most part, it's the streets. And you're saying that that basically is simply an enterprise of going out with fabric, well, doing some grading, putting the fabric in over whatever's there now, which isn't much, and then putting some gravel aggregate over it, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I would point you to item 26C. And that's kind of an example of why I have a problem with some of this agreement being kind of loose and us being required to, at this meeting, approve it. 26C indicates that the services to be performed by the city will perform the following services with respect to the improvements. Street C says street surfacing, aggregate, and base. That leaves it open to me that we do have the responsibility, and Mr. Wankman would be perfectly within his rights if we get this signed up, to say, without anything attached other than a readable copy for the council members of Exhibit B for the survey, to say you committed also to putting in a engineered base to the street. How would we answer that?
We're not putting in a paved base. There's a difference. You need to understand that. The dirt base is what's over there now. The streets probably existed 50 years ago. They've overgrown, they've been used for cattle, but that doesn't mean the streets were never there, sir, unless you've got pictures that prove they're not. I don't have one that proves it is or isn't, but I'm willing to bet that at one time the street was there and probably traveled by wagons. It's just, that was the district it was in. When you put in the SID, you then go through and rebuild the base properly for the pavement, which is where the big money comes in that Mary Jo is talking about. Put in just a basic dirt road like we're proposing here doesn't take a lot of time or money or engineering expertise to do.
Okay, those are dirt roads, and as you've admitted, Mr. Hand, it's pure speculation to indicate that they're anything other than dirt paths at the moment, correct?
They were probably dirt, yes, at one time.
And they're dirt right now.
That's correct.
Okay, so it's pure speculation to throw it out that if we went out there and did core samples and found out what was underneath the dirt, did we find anything other than more dirt?
Which was the way they built roads at that time, yes.
And actually, I went out there and did some core
I'm not
samples.
understanding your point.
I went out and did some core samples, and they are already base material underneath. It's there. It's gravel.
It's all river bottom.
It's all river bottom. So
Okay,
it's
but
exactly what we would, there's no clay, there's no dirt. The dirt's on top about first 3 to 6 inches. And then
Okay,
after
but-
that, you're in gravel,
3 to 6 inches of what, Mr. Mayor?
of dirt.
Okay, so it's 3 to 6 inches on top of gravel.
Correct.
But it's river gravel, it's not engineered gravel, correct?
That's all every street in this city is built on.
Engineered base, but this is not an engineered base that you're speculating, well, I guess you're saying is there. It's not an engineered base of gravel, is it? It's just a river gravel base.
I've been involved in numerous projects and watched, and they do not put in engineered base. They put in exactly what's underneath there.
Well, every city street
Call it
that
pit run.
I've been here that I've seen put in from scratch has had an engineered base, including gravel that has been compacted with machines. So that's an engineered base as far as gravel.
Is that not a paved
Because
base,
it's
sir?
simply, it's a river area with a gravel sub-area there underneath the dirt. It's not engineered.
And the engineer is going to tell us to run compactors over it, which we're going to, and it now will be compacted gravel. And then on top of that, we're going to throw the fabric, and then on top of that, we'll throw the road mix, which is what's used by all the contractors around here making streets is road mix on the top. And they
Okay.
compact that, and then we're done. That's,
So in answer to my question as far as 26C C, the answer is, well, Mr. Windland's a nice guy, and there's gravel there now, so there'd be no reason to require the city to put in an engineered base.
Once again, sir, the engineered base comes in, we put in pavement, not gravel. We're putting in a dirt road, not a paved road.
Well, going back to the language that's in this agreement, Mr.
It's a
Hans.
gravel road.
Correct, it's gravel road.
It says base.
Yes, under some gravel roads, you do put a base so it doesn't sink into the mud, you're correct. But a gravel road base is different from a paved road base. Go out to
Correct.
Pioneer subdivision and take a look.
Correct. And so since it's so ambiguous, it's set up in the agreement right now, other than Mr. Windland being a nice guy, what is to say that he could not say you need to put in an engineered base then?
Let's go up and drive around any of Ron Towery's projects east of town. Those are not, those are gravel roads. They didn't just grade off and then throw a little something down and then throw a little fabric and throw a little bit more gravel down. That's not how you build a road.
Actually, that's what
They did.
No, that isn't. I
That's
lived
Mr.
there. I
Tower,
lived
right?
there. I lived there. Are you kidding?
Well,
You people don't
okay,
live there.
we're-
I live there.
I'm spinning my wheels in the mud, literally, figuratively, so let's go on to something else. Mr. Mayor, in the agreement, and I assume this agreement was drawn up by Mr. Windland's attorneys?
Now it's Mr. Dolan.
Mr. Dolan?
And then the
It
street
says,
and alley committee worked on it, and Mr. Whitman and myself worked on it. So, that's where this contract came from.
I know it was before Streets and Alleys, I was on Streets and Alleys.
Right.
But I didn't want to waste Mr. Hand's time or Mr. Nye's time in debating all these issues at the committee level because it was obvious it was going to be.
Well, that's where it should have been done anyway.
That's why you have committee.
On page 1, it specifies this improvement agreement outlines the duties, responsibilities, timelines, and obligations of each party involved in the improvement of the West Side Addition in Dillon, Montana. Does this agreement cover the improvement of the entire plat of West Side Addition?
What did he say exactly? Or what was his question?
Does this agreement cover the improvements for the entire West Side Addition? Excuse me, the entire plat of West Side Addition? No is the answer.
I would probably say no. It's just the first page. The resolution kind of thing, the recitals, right above the recitals.
Well, here's my point. The West Side Addition covers all of the area of the West Side Addition, only a portion of which Mr. Wendland is developing, correct?
Well, he owns quite a bit of it. I can't tell you how much he doesn't. But he's.
Okay, but this agreement is not covering
The whole part, no.
improvement associated with the entire platted West Side Addition, correct?
It'd be more the utility improvements, would be the word to say.
But the area of the entire West Side Addition, this is only a portion of it, correct?
Well, this would be put in the streets, Ripe Street, Kent Street, and Franklin. So people can
That's
get
not-
around, that's part of it. So that will service.
That's not answering my question. The
Let me answer it. Yes, it
platted
is.
West Side Addition from 1910, this agreement only covers a certain area of it, correct?
No, because this is giving access to other properties there that he doesn't own.
But they're in the West Side Addition, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the answer to my question is, the West Side Addition is much larger in area than what we're dealing with under this agreement.
I'm not sure if I use the word much.
Yet this agreement, in referencing the agreement, it references in the improvement of the West Side Addition. That's apples and oranges. The improvement of the West Side Addition would be as if Mr. Wendland owned and was improving the entire West Side Addition. It should be called and referred to in the legal languages in this agreement as something other than the improvement of the West Side Addition. That's not accurate.
Mr. Mayor, what's the boundaries of the West Side Addition? That might solve this one.
Right. Right, Railroad, Kent. I'm trying to remember the last one. Timmons? Or North.
Exhibit C.
That's the boundary.
So, the piece of ground that has the lots parceled out into individual lots, that's the only part of this that's being addressed. The additional land outside of that is not part of this division. It's part of Mr. Westland's ground, that's true.
But Mr. Ham, and I gotta use my magnifier here because it's unreadable. The area behind the current area being developed is referenced as, looks like parcel W1A, is that correct?
That is not a part of the West
No,
Side.
that is not part of the West Side.
Correct. But that's referred to as parcel 1A, correct?
Might be, I don't have that particular plat.
Yeah, you got a magnifying glass.
You do.
No, it's part of the compressed survey that's unreadable as part of what's present.
Yeah, that's not part of the West Side Addition.
No, it is part of the West Side.
No, it is
No.
not.
Not platted.
It is not platted. Parcel
The overall West
W1A.
Side Addition includes that parcel and.
No, it does not.
So it's planted.
And the parcel.
What the West Side Addition is those 3 square blocks. That is all of the West Side Addition.
Okey dokey.
It does not entail W1A.
Okay, so the answer to the question, is the West Side Addition anything other than what Mr. Wendland owns for this development? The answer is no, he owns all of it.
No.
15 and a half.
If you look at page 16, I'm not incorrect here, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Winland. He owns all of the open lots, the ones that are hashed are owned by somebody else, is that correct? So, but all the ones that are open on that page 16 in those 3 blocks are owned by either Mr. Winland or Alicia.
We bought all the 3.5 lots of the first block that's hashed out now too.
Okay, well, that's not in the drawing. Okay, so they own even more than shown. So you can see how much they own on the West Side Addition, those 3 blocks.
Okay, so of those 3 blocks that we're talking about, Mr. Owen, this was news to me. Mr. Wendland does not own all of those properties.
Not all of them.
Okay? I hadn't thought about that possibility, so let me try to crank that through a little bit. The parcel that's shown behind, which I referred to as W1A, I believe is referred to somewhere in this agreement. I'd be unable to find it right now. Perhaps Mr. Dillon could find it, help me and find it. But it's referred to this in this agreement, and I believe it's referred to as property owned by Mr. Wendell.
Yeah, 214, page 6. And he owns that property. And what it is it's opening up if the engineer decides that the best way to handle storm drains is to pipe all of that out there to this one location that's shown on page 16 out in that area. That's what we'll do. But we're going to try not to do that area out there. That was only mentioned as that he's donating that possibility.
Okay, you kind of hit me out of the blue, Mr. Mayor. I was assuming that somewhere in here it was documented that Mr. Wendland owned all of these properties in the 3 blocks. So how do we do an improvement agreement with him for covering the streets and the sewer and water improvements for these 3 blocks if he only owns part of those properties?
His part of the water and sewer is going to go down White Street. And he'll then turn it over when he's all done to the city. That is the agreement that we're mainly having with him. He doesn't have much say at all on the streets. That would be the engineer and the city agreement. Although it's going to be in there saying that we're going to do the streets. And it's given him confidence, I don't know whatever word better, that once he puts in his water and sewer mains down there, then we will finish off and put a street there, a gravel street.
And Mr. Dolan, couldn't those property owners that Mr. Wendland does not represent, couldn't they come in later and say, wait a second, the city acted against our interest by entering into a development agreement with Mr. Wendland for all of these offsite improvements around our property? And we don't think those are the correct offsite improvements. We think they should have been something else. Wouldn't they, Mr. Dillon, have potential cause for action against the city?
I can't speak to whether they have a potential cause of action, but I can't say they potentially could weigh in and object to it, yes.
And that's a real world possibility, isn't it?
I would say yes.
We're the only ones getting the bill because SID only bills.
Okay, that's a major item with me. But
Well, let
we'll
Mr.
move on to
let
that.
Mr. Wendland respond to that.
Yeah.
Okay,
It should be on. Oh, if it's yellow, it's on.
There you go.
Okay. We'll be the only ones assessed the capital cost to the property or anyone who purchases the property, because only the properties joining the property being improved. So only the properties that join the portion of the street that's being improved, only those properties will be assessed cost. That's how an SID works. So all the improvements of those streets will eventually be put into an SID. The benefit of this is if we sell any of those properties while it's a gravel road, the new purchasers know that there's going to be an SID taking that gravel road into an asphalt road. So it takes all that out of question. It's a succession of deed and agreement.
I guess, can I ask you a question, Mr. Wendland?
Absolutely.
So your response is basically to make a point that the other property owners couldn't claim foul because they wouldn't incur any financial penalty in terms of the development?
They won't be assessed any cost for the improvements of the street.
Okay, is that your point?
Yes, that's the point. And I'd also like to point out too that the bulk of the improvements, water and sewer and all of those things, are being put in also. So the mayor, you ask the mayor for things that are beneficial to the city. Well, we've got this great big water and sewer infrastructure that we paid for with tax dollars, and the way we pay things like that off is with service connections. So we've got 30 city lots sitting in Dillon since 1910 that could be paying into water and sewer dues, and they're not.
Oh,
So that's one of the.
I'm behind you 100%. I hope the development can go. I still got a question, if you can take it.
I believe so.
Thank you.
Well,
If you're making the point that they wouldn't, let's assume the point's well made, they wouldn't have any financial negative consequences of the city's agreement with you for these improvements. But that's just on the financial end. It's a real world possibility that they could say, well, we don't like these plans and specs in terms of what you've agreed with the city on what the sewer and water and retention pond and street and area of improvement that's associated with this as far as drainage. We don't like all of that.
they're being built to the city.
And we don't like the fact that you agreed to it with the city in terms of our interests. Our interests conflict with that. Wouldn't they have a potential cause of action as just discussed with Mr. Dolan, not only against the city, but potentially against you?
I believe that the city street was platted in 1910, and the city and the state of Montana have design specs. They say this is how you have to build a road. So I know the city does. I don't know what book and section it is, but anytime a road is designed, the road's going to be designed to the city specs. So it's a city street. We're building to the city specs. I don't really see any. I don't understand, I guess, the liability.
Well, the mayor hit me with a reality, I guess, that I didn't anticipate, which was that you didn't own all the properties. But trying to think that through real quick, that's the first thing that comes to my mind, is that you could end up in a conflict with these other owners.
And that's possible. I mean, that's very possible. But when you do a SID, there's a protest period. Anybody can protest, except Mr. Winland, if this contract is signed. He or his beneficiary, whatever, they cannot protest. So.
But that would just be for the SID that's covering, Mr. Mayor,
the street pavements.
The underground improvements, correct?
No, that's the streets. The SID has to do with only the streets.
Only the streets.
Water and sewer would just be the main going down Wright Street.
Okay, so that's totally Mr. Winland's responsibility.
That's totally Mr. Winland's responsibility, well, and his wife, those two as partners. And they will pay for it. They gotta follow the specs of the engineer. And when that's done, he will turn it over to the city to take care of the water and sewer lines. It'll be built to the specs, the engineer will check it. That's all under his part. And he pays for it all.
Okay.
And if anybody goes down there and buys a lot, now at that point, there would be a water and a sewer main there that they can easily connect to. So we don't have to worry about it.
Okay, well, it's still concerning in my mind, theoretically. Let's move on. bear with me here, I have to read something before I ask this question.
Just a quick question. Mr. Dolan, I thought that it had passed through the legislature that you could no longer prevent people from protesting. They couldn't be forced into a SID when buying a piece of property.
They can't waive their protest.
Right, they can't
Yeah.
waive their protest.
That's correct, yeah.
So it is an automatic SID. The people can still protest the SID.
What that part of the subdivision is if I subdivide a piece of property and the subdeveloper decides I will then waive or make a waiver of a SID down the road. And that was part of the agreement with the planning board, and the council has agreed to that. That's what the court says, is whoever buys that lot or lots did not have the chance to say, I did not want to be in the SID. That's not allowed. That's wholly different. This person, or the two, owns that property. He is signing up to his property that I will waive the SID.
But when he sells those
And
properties,
it'll go on to the deed then.
There's a deed restriction that prevents it.
and I thought that they could no longer put that on the deed, that you gave up your right to protest a SID.
In the context of the subdivision, yes. Yeah, they can't do that.
Subdivision.
But this is not a subdivision.
This is a subdivision.
You're selling lots, of course, I don't care if you call it a subdivision or a
The lots
development.
have already been made and been accepted by the city along with the streets. They're not a subdivision anymore.
That was 110 years ago, Mr. Mayor.
You still
That's correct. It
can't take away somebody's right to protest a SID.
No, they're buying the SID when they buy the ground.
Yes.
It's already in place, it's already there.
Full disclosure.
I follow up with my next question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you. Referring to the agreement, item 1.2. And I'm reading by quote. For any building to occur on the west side addition, owner must submit and obtain approval from the zoning committee before any building can begin. Has that approval already been obtained from the zoning committee?
No.
That's a permit.
Well, some of them has. He's come to the
Oh,
zoning board and got permits.
I'll take it back. A few of them's already been built and he came to the zoning commission and but those are around the front of the railroad street, nothing in the back.
Yeah, non-reef.
Okay, so the existing demolition, including some of the right-of-way on railroad, and fencing and excavation and poured foundations for structures, all of that has been permitted through zoning and building.
I am not sure what you're asking, because none of it's been, the buildings have been built.
It says the owner must submit and obtain approval from the zoning committee before any building can begin.
Correct.
So my question is, was that approval obtained?
Yes.
For the buildings that are there, yes.
And the ones currently being built are being approved.
Yes.
That was obtained through zoning?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on. Throughout the agreement, it refers to detailed plans and specs. Where are Exhibit B's detailed plans and specs.
This is part of the contract.
The sequencing that's in item 2.9, the first item on that list is obtain approval of final construction plans for both parties. So why are we at the point that you're asking, Mr. McQuinlan is asking the city to approve this agreement where the only thing attached at the level of the city council approving it is an unreadable copy of the survey with no plans, no specs, and I know it's a rub of Councilwoman Rourke that I share, that there is no costing estimate attached to the proposal as is coming before the city for the cost of the off-site improvements, both from the sense of those that the city will undertake, and I think it would be appropriate for the off-sites, since they are off-sites, that we have some sense of what the costs of those are, and in terms of the shared arrangement, if they're substantial as far as Mr. Women's end, I think it would be appropriate to share with the city exactly what his source of the estimates are for the cost of those improvements and what the numbers are.
Well, first off, look at page 2.3.
Okay.
What does it say?
Well, what I could read just as well as you can there. What are you pointing to?
It's saying you hire the engineer and he creates the construction plans. And then it will come to you guys, the council, to agree to the whole plan is laid out. But this is setting up the agreements to start. We have to get an engineer hired to produce the plans on how it's all going to lay out.
That's not what this says.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't. It says that we will follow through, that we will, number one, engage with the developer and go through and have a set of plans drawn up that includes all of the improvements and the installation of all improvements. And we don't know what that plan's going to cost, but it says we'll do that. And then this goes on to say that we will implement those improvements as far as the roads are concerned. We don't have any idea how much those roads are going to cost, but it says that we'll do that, and we'll do that within 2 years. We are signing a blank check for the people of Dillon to pay for of something we have no idea of what it's going to cost.
Okay, let's do this. I have not talked to the Winwoods to see if they'll agree to this. Would it be acceptable if we just went out on this and make a short contract that we will hire an engineer? That the two of us will get together, and then Dave, he will come up with the plans, show it all lays out, and the cost estimates. Then we will come back and fill out the rest of this stuff at that point. So everybody then can see what the estimates of the engineer will be for the cost of the streets, the cost of the water and sewer, even though it's not really our problem on that.
I believe item 2.4B gives us the final right of veto as well. So we're not locked in.
That would be a considerable improvement over the situation that we find ourselves right now, Mr. Mayor, and I would support that.
But I have not asked the Winwoods.
May I point out one other area of interest? And then I'm done. Okay, the section 2.13 point. It's on page 6. Maintenance of stormwater improvements. The city and its agents and contractors shall have the right to enter upon any lot containing stormwater improvements for the purpose of inspecting and maintaining the same. Wouldn't it normally be, that concerns me, that language, wouldn't it normally be the responsibility of whoever owns those lots and builds on them? Wouldn't those underground improvements, the maintenance of them be their responsibility?
No.
No.
Stormwater is all owned by the city.
Yes. We have 3 of them.
Stormwater on site or off site?
Both.
Both.
Stormwater on property site is owned by the city?
Correct. Think of a pipe going underneath the ground. It carries stormwater.
Okay.
That's our responsibility as the city. That's not the landowners.
We would have a right there to dig if we need to, so they shouldn't build any buildings on it.
Right.
Okay, so there are underground stormwater, I can't tell because all I got is B. I don't have plans and specs to look at, so don't shoot arrows at me for asking this question. So there are stormwater underground piped improvements going underneath some of these lots?
There may well be.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That's what 2.14 talks about.
The engineer has to lay those out yet.
And he has to make, or she has to make the decision, are we gonna do it that way? Which way is the best for the city and for Mr. Windland, or for the Windlands? Excuse me.
Okay, I would be comfortable if we can break this into pieces and in a more logical sense for the city's interest anyway. Maybe not Mr. Windland's, but city's interest be protected by more methodically looking at exactly what the improvements are that the city are going to be responsible for, being able to see those in the engineer developed plans and specs. And, let me throw this out, and I don't know if anybody else would support this. I don't know how many months ago it occurred, but it certainly wasn't in the winter. You'll recall that the Parks Committee somehow was able to, with the assistance of city staff and the mayor, go out and actually look at all the parks and eyeball exactly what was the current situation in terms of certain improvements, some that had already come before the committee, and what the future looked like in terms of near future, in terms of the park and what the physical improvements that were contemplated might look like. It was a big help. I think everybody agreed to that. I think likewise, having gone out and looked at this area, Mr. Windland, and I didn't trespass, by the way, it would be a big help, I think, to the council members if somehow we could be invited en masse or individually out to just get a better eyeball idea of exactly what's involved in this agreement in terms of not only the streets, but the sewer and water and catch basin, the nuts and bolts in terms of the physical improvements that are associated with this. I don't know if you think that's a good idea or not, but let me throw it out.
Can I respond? Because these are like 50 things, Lord.
Grab another microphone underneath there.
Is this one good?
Yeah, that one's too late to dead.
I've got batteries if you want to place the battery. Is it on right now?
I kind of want to back up a little bit because we have a couple things going on. We have a motion, and then we're discussing, talking about another agreement. I think if anybody is throwing the rub here, it's everybody sitting at this table because this already went through. This whole thing went through. This isn't just started planning today. 6 months, couple years, this thing's been going on, and we took it through the street and alley, and everybody on the street and alley made a recommendation to the city council to approve the agreement. The site visit, better drawings, all of those things over the last, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6 months of planning, extremely accommodatable. But we put together an entire contract and a plan. We believe it's mutually beneficial. We believe we're giving above and beyond a contribution to the city because we've paid in substantial amount of money as the water sewer development fees that are for the extension of water and sewer. And we believe our properties, 30 deeds that we have in hand, join a street that is platted. And that's what the courthouse is doing. So I don't want to get too off track and continue on. I'm just saying at this point we have a motion to approve an agreement that these discussions were voted on by you. So if anybody's getting the rub, I think everybody here and myself is kind of wondering if you had all these, why'd you make a motion to bring it to the council 9:30 at night? Thank you.
Are you asking me that question?
That, in general, I'm just making a statement. I believe we have a motion to approve or deny the contract, and I believe it went not just one, because I missed the meeting, it went to another meeting that we discussed changing some things, and we changed them, and then we made a motion to bring it to the city council. So, just a little confused, I guess.
Okay, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
You leaned back and I couldn't tell if you were still there or not. We've got a motion on the floor, or on the table. I would like to amend that motion per your suggestion. Is that possible?
You can amend it, but we haven't got an agreement with the Windward, so that might mean nothing. They don't agree also. But you can amend it, and we can have a second, if there is a second.
Okay, I would make a motion to amend per the mayor's previous suggestion.
Which is we hire an engineer and they will develop the plans, survey, and then come up with estimates and then present it to the council. Is that what the
correct.
motion is?
Yes, sir.
Does the Windwards have any problem with doing it that way?
We won't spend a private penny without an agreement in place so that we can tie up tens of thousands of dollars or more and then come back to this situation here. We've already been through the street and alley committee process. This would have all been entertained. Any questions we asked, the questions came up for the time period. How long should it be? 1 year, 2 years? So we waited, we went over those things.
Mr. Winland, this is the correct place for these questions to be asked and answered. You have gone through the Water and Sewer Committee, but now it comes to the council, and the council has every right to ask all these questions. And I believe that before we can saddle the people of Dillon with this kind of potential liability, we need to know what it's going to cost.
So I have a motion made by Mr. Wassel. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion on the amendment.
If the Winterlands ain't going to, don't want to participate in the drawings, I guess maybe I would suggest that the city of Dillon just drive down there with their grader, find their corner fence, grade the road out and say, there you go, there's your road. We really don't need an agreement to grade the road.
That's correct.
So why don't the city just go down and not even worry about the agreement? Go down there, find the corner fence, grade the roads out and say, here's your
I
guys.
really don't. I don't want to put a lot of work into the road because he's going to be digging it up, putting the water and sewer
We're
lines
not gonna
up.
put a lot of work into it, send the grader down there, grade the road. If they wanna dig it up, put the water and sewer in it and put it back together like a road, fine. When they wanna do a SID and do the road improvement, they can do their SID and do the road improvement. Once the road is established, there it is.
So we could have the state come down and inspect that road.
It don't need to be inspected.
We don't need it.
Not the state's
It's
inspected.
not the state's road. Winterland's want a road. The city, by rights, I mean, they come out and grade all roads, they grade the end of Banning Street, they grade all the other roads in Dillon. When they need gravel, they haul gravel down there. We don't need ingredients to take care of our roads.
That's right, and I can build on block 1, I believe, and there's supposed to be a fire hydrant on that street every 250 feet, not to exceed 500 feet. We've agreed to pay for it. So I would gladly build on that block, but there does have to be infrastructure at that point. And we have paid substantial monies into the water and sewer improvement districts every time we built a project. And we're offering to put the water and sewer in at our cost. It's a fair shake. The city put some gravel on the road they've already owned. We put all the water and sewer in, and we finish the road when it's all done. The only issue that I have with everything that's happening right now is we've gone through all the discussions, and right now, the contract isn't being built right now. The contract was supposed to be built in the Street and Alley Committee. We're supposed to cover all the questions, everything, submit the contract to the city, and the city's just supposed to say, is it a fair shake for the city or not a fair shake for the city? We're not supposed to create the contract here at the city council meeting tonight. That's all I'm saying.
Actually, the city council's people who do the contract for the street and alley do a good job of getting the outlines, but actually the whole city council is the one that has to approve it.
I agree you have to approve it.
And, see, for me, I have some other questions that I too am worried about what the total cost of the street is going to end up being. But what worries me, the street so much, like I said, is basically we'll go down there and grade it and put gravel on it, call it a street. That ain't going to be that expensive, I can't see. What worries me is the drainage improvement city. I don't know on E, 26E, the drainage systems and improvement determined to be necessary by the city, including all necessary ditches, ponds, catch bases. That could turn out to be quite an expensive ordeal if the DEQ comes in and says you'll put a storm drain here, and God knows, no, I guess we got to catch, I'm assuming it's already,
It's already your
we have
responsibility.
a reference to it already here, I'm assuming.
Well, that's that one, if that's what the engineer deems we should do.
Right.
We offered to grant you land to retain the water that you legally have to retain. But your responsibility is still responsible for water retention from that road, regardless. So what we've done is the mayor said we will grant all the easements and the location for water retention if it is so needed. So we're offering you land that you don't have to retain the water that's already your responsibility to retain.
Again, is it our responsibility to retain water on a platted street 100 years old? It wasn't required when the street was platted. If there was a new subdivision, new law says yes, 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 yes. We're talking again, a street that's technically 110 years old. It wasn't required when they put the street in. All we're doing is maintaining the street. Do we have to put storm drains in on something that's 110 years old?
Welcome to environmental law.
Exactly. It's gross.
We have no choice.
But they still allow what do they call them? I can't call them catch basins, but
French drain.
I call them French drains, and those are still allowed, and that's what I was gonna put in.
Which is what we have everybody else consider for the most part.
But what kicks in our requirement to put in a French drain into this?
The engineer. And at that point, when the engineer comes in with his drawings, or her drawings, I use the word loose on that, then it comes to the council and they have to approve the whole thing at the end. And then work starts, if you guys all agree to all that.
But if we're already contracted in to do it.
Well, still, it's contracted in there that you guys have to approve it.
That's a good upgrade.
But we could do kind of what you have laid out, that we could run a grader over it and throw some fabric down and throw a little gravel down and call it a road. That isn't a road. And when you build roads, you have to do them to state standards.
No.
Yes, you do.
No,
you don't.
You do not.
The city standard.
They all have to be the city standards, not state standards.
And we have city standards.
And
We're not using state dollars.
city standards are supposed to mirror the state standards.
Not necessarily. I agree that it's probably a good idea.
That's why we need an engineer to draw up these specs and to
Yeah,
draw up the
You've got 'em.
plan.
we got them. All the specs that we have been set up by the engineer.
Where's the plan?
They're in
From
the- they're in
engineering.
the publication.
It's all in, I don't remember where exactly it's located.
Oh, there's a couple different books back there that do show, and they are to state standards. You're right, they are to state standards. But what I'm saying is, where's the plan for this? And we need to have that plan, and we need to have those specs and the costs associated with each one before we can sign off on this. This could be $1 million liability for the city, and we could bankrupt the city before we even begin to pay for this improvement.
Once again, look at 2.4B, we have an out.
That isn't an out.
Yes, it is, because we can invalidate the contract at that point. We don't approve it. We go back to square one with Wendlands, which would be a terrible thing. Leave it alone.
Mr. Hand?
This. Yes.
Mr. Hand, why do you say that 2.4B is the city's out?
Oops, that is wrong. I think I pointed to the wrong one, just a sec.
I think you want 2.9B1.
That would be one, yes.
So it says that the council has to approve the construction plans.
Correct.
Yeah, but if we don't approve the construction plans and he comes back with another set of plans, can he eventually say
Well-
that the city of Dillon is trying to get out of the contract by not approving the plans? Because there is nothing in here.
Yeah,
that says-
if you're saying that that's the city's out, that we'd have final ability to, say, well, the final construction plans aren't to our liking, and whatever. I think I'd like to go back to law school and become Mr. Wendland's attorney.
Well, I'm more than willing to wait for the city to hire an engineering firm to design Wright Street, if that's what they'd like to do. If the city would like to hire an engineer to design the improvements of Wright Street, I'll wait. I wish we would have started that recommendation in the street and alley meeting, but if the city chooses to hire an engineer and design Wright, that's
And that's
fine.
all we would
I already
do.
did it once, I think I
Just
paid
the streets.
$1,800 to have the street designed, and we offered to pay for the whole thing.
The street and storm drain, where they're gonna be placed.
Absolutely.
No, that'd be up to his engineer. It's the same engineer, but, and the city will approve that, but that They would hire that engineer and they would then design the water and the sewer placement. And then that would still come, you know, I mean, sure, you guys gotta understand, he's covering the total cost of the water and sewer.
Right.
Yes. Engineering, everything.
Everything.
And we're gonna give it
covering
back
the
to the
cost of
city
the
when it's all
streets.
done.
Right.
And then we're gonna asphalt it and assess it to our deeds if we still own it. So if I built rentals in there, I still own them. Those taxes are gonna come to me. If I build a house in there and I sell it to somebody's daughter, they're gonna be on the hook to pay their portion of the asphalt that's in front of their street.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes?
in regards to the proposed amendment, and your thinking, would it be fair to say that, we're looking at a 110-year-old plat, which hasn't had any work done on it? And so ultimately, obviously, as the city grows, hopefully, that at some, either our board or somebody else's board in the future, somebody's gonna have to do something in regards to the West Side Addition.
Correct.
The streets.
Correct. Yes, correct.
So
And
would
water
it
and sewer.
would it be fair to say that we might as well bite the bit on that in terms of at least going through the engineering on what those streets, as currently envisioned, minimally, what they would cost and what the associated, and I share his concern, the associated water-related improvements would cost that Mr. Graham has identified. We're going to have to do that eventually anyway. It's a fair thing, I think, for us to just go ahead and ante up at this point and those costs and figure it out.
And for the streets and for the storm drains is all we're talking about right now.
Right.
Not the water and sewer. Water and sewer is gonna be driven totally by the street survey and drive the water and sewer. In a sense of how deep you have to go and all that stuff. So, and that's what the motion we have on the table to amend is.
What's the motion?
That we'll just go out and hire the engineer to design, to survey and design the streets with cost estimates. And then we'll come back to do the full-blown contract.
And regroup.
And what?
Regroup.
So we have to pull our first motion.
Oh, no, you amend it and then,
I'm still, so the motion's gonna be,
or just grab the microphone and keep it with you.
so the motion's gonna be to hire the engineer firm to estimate the cost.
Design the streets and estimate the cost.
So they're gonna set corners, do elevations, give an estimate.
Yep.
Pretty much.
Yep.
All
Plans and specs and
At
costs.
our cost, right?
At our cost.
Instead of
I think we should consider doing the full engineering, because we are going to have to maintain the water and the sewer after it's installed.
That's a great idea.
I think we should, and then when we come back, then we will assess that part of the engineering study
Water and sewer and everything.
to,
Well, we can't
We're
charge
not-
him for it without having a contract.
Right, so that costs us how
You're,
much?
you're asking to have something engineered and I'm offering to pay for it.
well, actually in here, it calls for the city and the developer to mutually, did I read that incorrectly?
No, that's correct,
Mr.
but you're not
Buckley?
passing that. No.
You're only having what you're asking to have paid for is pretty much what you're doing, and then you're gonna put the gravel down. What you guys have to pay for is the portion of engineering for the designing of the road. So setting the corners of the road, where is the road? That's your responsibility already. So the engineer, the surveyor will decide where the road is. How is the road gotta be built? Well, the surveyor has to tell us what elevation to build the road to based on the existing water and sewer system that is already in Kent Street, I believe.
Yep.
So what you're suggesting to pay for and have done is the portion of what you're going to pay for.
Right.
The rest of the contract says you're gonna put the gravel in and make the road drivable, and we're gonna pay for everything else.
And you'll be paying for your plan.
I'm paying for the portion of engineering that defines the water and sewer. The mayor reviews it, and the city submits it to DEQ to be approved by the state of Montana. Okay, so those plans get engineered, paid for by us, reviewed by the mayor in one of our sessions, the design session, and it has to be submitted to the state for DEQ to approve the main water and sewer extension plan. So all this has to be designed, created, submitted to the state of Montana, approved, and then we can start doing improvements.
Right.
So that's what it says.
But we can't do the water and sewer design before you pass this contract.
Correct.
That's correct.
But we shouldn't sign this contract until we know what the streets are going to cost.
And that's what
And
we're
whether we can
discussing.
afford them.
Okay, how about we put a stopgap on it? We'll allocate the streets from cost up to X dollars without any further.
And because if we sign this, we are committed to building those roads. And it doesn't matter how much they cost.
That's what I said, put a cap on
It doesn't matter if
but
there's
you're
a
not
cap.
committed
If
to
we've
building
already
the road.
signed this, we have to build the roads, Don.
You're committed to finding where the road is. Where is the city's road? You're committed to finding the elevation it's supposed to be based on where the water sewer is and putting the base gravel in. That's the commitment of the city, making the road drivable. And we're
Right.
offering to pay the rest.
Building the roads. And I think that we should know how much they cost before we sign a contract to build them. We should not saddle the people of Dillon with that kind of unknown liability.
Mr. Hand, in answer to your question, I'd be interested in what the city attorney Dolan would have to say on that. But just off the top of my head, even if it's legal, you could easily end up, if you had to enforce that stop loss, with a situation where you got a half-built street and storm improvements, and then nothing's gonna go forward, obviously, for the developer, because then he's got a problem because he can't get the access to his properties as he had originally envisioned, forgetting the stormwater issue. And the city would end up with half-improved streets that then we gotta come back at another table, or somebody else has to, and straighten out. The stop loss would not work.
I'm totally confused. We went through so many. Right now, we have one motion on the table. Are we ready for, the motion on the table is, are we gonna go and hire an engineer and a surveyor for the streets only? Pretty much that's it.
That's the modification to the motion to approve the agreement.
Correct, and if you go through with the motion and you pass the motion, it pretty much the original one changes to just doing the engineer now. If that passes, this amendment.
Now, are we gonna do the storm drain and cost estimate for the storm drain?
Yes,
And the cost estimate for the streets?
yes.
So
Those
we're
are
going
the two
to-
things we'll be doing.
So we'll design
What
the
is the green
streets and the storm drain system.
Yes.
Are you saying, Mr. Mayor, that if we do the amendment as proposed, that we are also approving the agreement? My understanding was we were doing the amendment and pending the results of the engineering plans and specs and costs, that we would then be able to proceed on the overall issue of the agreement. It would be pended, subject to the engineer's input.
Well, how I take Robert's rules is as soon as you amend the amendment, or you amend the motion, and that passes, then your original motion is changed to what you amended. And what I consider, this is a big major amendment, which pretty much throws everything else in the contract out except for that the city will hire an engineer and a surveyor and check out the streets and the storm drain, or stormwater, whatever you want.
The
That's
problem
it.
with that, folks, is that puts Mr. Wendland in a bind. He's expressed desire at the city council there, as well as at the street and alley committee, that he wants to get going on the project. He's got certain timelines. We shove him back, he's got to pay more interest on his money, assuming he can still get his money. So you may well kill the project in totality if you do this.
Well, and we may bankrupt the city if we don't get good estimates.
The reason we did the contract the way that we
Well,
did.
we're in the middle of a winter in terms of the timeline as far as developing property and construction improvements. So I'm not sure, but that's totally germane.
Unless it's later done. The reason we designed it this way is so the city had a commitment from us personally, and we had a commitment from the city. We have no objections to what you're proposing right now, but at the same time, you're just committing the city to spend money without any agreement. We have cows that graze that property. Like Mr. Hand said, it's likely the market's gonna slow down. But we're planning for that. I think right now we're okay, we can put water and sewer in this summer, but maybe if we wait until the summer, we're talking about putting water and sewer in next summer. Nobody knows what it's gonna be like this summer, next summer, and next summer. So the reason we sat down for months and months and months and talked about this is the city wanted some commitment from us. And if we were going to spend capital on designing things, we wanted some commitment from the city so that we know where we stand. We actually know what our costs will be as soon as they're engineered. That's where we're at. That's why we did it this way. But we're more than willing to wait if you guys would like to hire an engineer and design the road reasonable time. That's right. We're more than willing to wait a reasonable time. So if the motion is we're going to hire an engineer this week or next week, so we're more than willing. If you guys want to hire the engineer, pay all that stuff, it just goes back to square one when the city's spending money on it.
So the motion would be that the city agrees to engage a civil engineer registered by the state of Montana to prepare detailed plans and specifications for the building of roads and a storm drain system on the in the west side development or whatever.
Okay, well, not just the west side development.
The-
It's down to Rice Street, Kent Street, Franklin. Those three streets.
The three blocks of Wright, the Kent, and
Franklin.
Franklin.
What?
Let me ask a question. You wanna ask?
Mr. Dolan, can I ask a question of Mr. Dolan?
Yes, Mr. Kentworthy, I'm here.
The proposed thing on the table right now is for us to vote on hiring the city, hire an engineer, to give us a cost basis of what we think the sewer, storm drains, and the roads are gonna cost. And if we get that information from the engineer, and there are 4 or 5 members of council that say, oh, that's just too much money, we can't afford to do that, does that not put an individual such as Mr. Wendland in a position where he and or his partners can block city property lots on roads that have been in existence for over 100 years that are not being improved upon by the city as a responsibility of the city? Does that not put them in a position where they can sue the city and it end up costing us a whole lot more money in a lawsuit?
Well, I never say that somebody couldn't sue somebody else, Mr. Kenworthy. I mean, I think the one thing that one fact that would be important would be the fact that, they purchased the property knowing that the streets had not been developed, and that might be something they would have to, look at figuring out how to do. My thoughts are really, we've been at this for an hour and a half. There's been concerns raised about cost. I don't think it's an unreasonable proposal as far as maybe a preliminary engineering report, I think is what they call that. I have seen these agreements, and again, I note that this agreement has draft in it because I knew it would be ripped apart by 8 people. And I have no problem with that. That's part of good debate. But I have seen these agreements structured where they'll do a memorandum of understanding to explore certain aspects of the proposal, and then based upon that, advance to the actual proposal itself.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, I have concerns. Now, what if we go ahead and approve going and getting an engineering firm to do the costs and things and design it all? Now, what's to say that we get all that and we come back and we want to contract with Mr. Wendland? Because in this contract, he's willing to do the sewer and water.
And he still.
And if we come back, say, well, okay, we'll do it, and if he says, well, I'm not gonna do the sewer and water, now you have to.
Then we're put back in the same situation we are right now with imaginable streets for 110 years, but we've got a better position because now we know if we do improve those streets, what it's gonna cost us in the near term.
And we can tell the people of Dillon, this is what it's gonna cost, and it's gonna cost each of us X amount of dollars for however long, and they can agree to it or not agree to it. I mean.
And if Mr. Knight, if Mr. Wendland doesn't wanna go forward with the proposal, then, since we've got the engineering stuff there, for someone else to look at in terms of eventually working on some kind of a development agreement for these 3 blocks, that's certainly a plus.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is you got a pretty good deal here. He's willing to put the streets or the sewer and water in at his cost, not at our cost. Now, that's gonna be a considerable amount of money. And if we do this and we come back, say, okay, we're willing to go with the contract, and he says, well, I'm not gonna do this water and sewer, you guys have to. Because he's within the city limits, then we have to provide city or water and sewer, do we not?
At least fire.
Yes.
If I build back there, you have to at least give me fire, which is a water main line. And it's gotta be, that does have to be a specific size.
I mean, there are other costs that he's willing to pay that we could end up paying if we don't do things like we have right now.
But Mr. Wendland is willing to provide funding for those costs, which we have no idea what that is.
With this contract.
Assume it's adequate for the moment and he can meet those obligations. That's fine, but we don't know what our obligations are financially. I mean, I agree with Councilwoman O'Rourke. The mayor's estimate of $20,000 total for this project, I don't know if it's exponentially off mark, but it's under budget. And if you count in the improvements that Mr. Graham's focused in on in terms of the stormwater, we could be in for a pretty substantial bill on this project. And we don't know that. We don't know that for certain. It could be workable. It probably is workable. But we can't take a guess on behalf of the citizens of Dillon. We have to find out what those costs are going to be and what those plans look like and what those specifications look like.
So you're willing to put out all the money for the engineering with no hope of return?
Well, we're gonna have to eventually.
Not at this time, we don't have to.
All we're gonna do is the streets, not water and sewer.
Yeah, right now we run the blade down, we're done, that's true. But we might as well fix it up right the first time.
Mr. Hand, are you really willing to sign a blank check?
I don't think it's a blank check.
It is a blank check. It says whatever it costs,
No,
we will put in these roads, and we will put them in within 2 years. And it doesn't matter, we have no idea what's underneath. There could be all kinds of hidden costs there. There could be all kinds of things that we have no idea about. And we're not being thoughtful and considerate with the potential of what this could cost all of the citizens, all of the homeowners in Dillon.
once again, the cost of building a gravel road is very inexpensive. Putting in a paved road, yes, it's very expensive. I agree. That part I agree with. Once again, you're looking at a completely different road than we're gonna put in. And that's why I don't have any problem going with what we've got. 20,000 will probably most likely do everything.
It might be a little higher than 20, I did forget. The storm drains are about 1,500 apiece,
Okay.
and they'd need probably about three.
Yeah, a little over that.
So I was off a little bit, so.
You're over 25.
Potentially, Mr. Mayor, you've got conforming issues in terms of storm drains, all of the other nuts and bolts in terms of stormwater, that potentially could be a part of this that Mr. Graham was focusing in on. Those could be costly.
They could be costly, and we're willing to grant the retention space needed to build those.
And without signing contract, you don't have that. But you still got the same problems.
But at least the people will know how much these roads are gonna cost.
But it's still
How
gonna
much the
cost them.
land is gonna cost?
Well, how about let's get another public person.
No, I appreciate that. My name is Justin Hartman. My wife and I live actually not in the city of Dillon, in the county, but I would tell you this, I would have gladly paid way more money to have Kerrigan Lane fixed and done right the first time.
Yeah.
It is, so the idea to me of hearing that the people of Dillon are not in favor of getting an assessment to improve our town, I would side on the other side. I would say I would gladly pay more money to have something improved in this community and done right. The other question I want to know is, I've heard a lot of stuff like negatively about this project. Is there anybody in this room that actually thinks that this project could be a positive thing for our community?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so it definitely can be a positive thing. So I understand that there are risks to everything, right? There are definitely risks, and we have to weigh those, and I appreciate the questions, but I think one of the things that I wish that I would hear more in this discussion is the driving force of influencing Dillon to become a better community, not saddled with the what-ifs of the detriment. We have an opportunity in our community with the way that things are going, with people moving to Dillon and looking to this community to be a retirement home, a place to bring their kids, to offer them something that they could afford because of the size of what's going on, the cost benefit that these individuals will provide, and I think that we need to look at it from that perspective, being smart with our money. The last thing I would say is this: if somebody else, let's say they get tired of this back and forth, and they sell it to somebody, to the gentleman up there, I'm sorry I don't know your name, but I thought you made some very good points. The guy in the orange, Rich? Matt. I thought he made some very good points with the fact of, let's say somebody else does come in and they're not as agreeable, and they go, I'm leveraged up, these are roads, I'm coming at you. That's a possibility as well, correct?
Yes.
That's an absolute possibility. So I would hope that we could get to a point, and I'm not saying that it's not this way, where we see a young couple, or whether they're young or not, willing to invest in their community and take great stock in that. And say, let's work at this and not go from a defensive standpoint, but from an offensive standpoint to where we can improve our town and go at it from there. And so those are just some things that I've taken away. I don't know a lot about the project, but I'm sitting here and I'm listening, love the community, love what we're doing, but I'd rather us go at it from a particular standpoint of let's improve Dillon and not worry so much about the what ifs, because there's some what ifs on the other side that are way worse than this.
Good job.
Well, in answer to that, perhaps you missed my initial point in speaking to Mr. Wendland, which was, I think his project will be an improvement in Dillon, and I hope it works.
I heard that.
I don't think the council members, any of us, are wanting this project to fail. We don't. We hope it succeeds. But our job is to look after the taxpayers' money and try to make a fair deal.
Amen, I appreciate that. I'm one of them, and I'm for paying more money. What's that?
Feel free to drop a check off in the morning.
Absolutely will. I got like $1 left. Will that work?
Treasurer's right there.
Yes, absolutely.
You sound like Warren Buffett.
And I want to make sure that you understand that we hope that this program, that this project goes forward, and we want the best roads built. We don't want just something bladed over and throw a little of this and throw a little of that. We want good roads built so that they last a lifetime, and so that when they come back and put asphalt on them, that's literally what they're doing. They're not having to build a road bed, because the road bed's already been built. The roads would be built to the same kind of standards that they were built in due subdivision, so that when they come back to put the asphalt on, it was like in due subdivision. That's all they had to do. They had to put one more layer of base.
Okay, first of all, you missed the point of totality, Mary Jo. A dirt road has a far different sub-base
We're
than a
doing a
paved
gravel
road does.
road. We're doing a gravel road.
Right, you're talking about a paved road. It has a very different base. Go out to Pioneer Subdivision and drive the roads. Those were a gravel road they put pavement on top of. The sub-base was not fixed properly. They got potholes all over them, they're going back to gravel. We're not doing that. That comes taken care of in the SID.
What the roads, if you want to look at roads that were built correctly, you could go out to any of the Towery subdivisions and look at those roads, and they're all gravel roads. Some of them are started to be asphalted up at Fox Run, but the other subdivisions have not been asphalted. And those are roads that are constructed. I mean, they're built roads.
And right now they're going into a SID program.
And they're going
At
into,
Fox Run.
they're going into sticker shock when they found out what the engineer is going to cost to put pavements on the road. They're already trying to find a way to get out of it.
Yep. Because they have to go through and rebuild the road base to handle pavement. That's what we're trying to get to. We're not doing that.
Well, let's make sure that we're not saddling the people of Dillon with $1 million project without them knowing it. Maybe the people of Dillon will say, great, that sounds like a great investment. Let's do that $1 million. But at least we told them that up front.
Okay, we've had a lot of discussion. What this is this is a motion to amend. It's pretty much going to be that we'll hire the engineer to do and a surveyor to do the streets and the storm drain stuff.
Which effectively kills the agreement.
And that will then at that point, well, and it might, but at that point, with that passes, that amendment passes, then that removes the rest of the contract. So when you vote on the contract, it'll just be the amendment part. I know it sounds like it's worthless or meaningless at that point. That's what Robert's rules say to do. So when you guys vote, if you vote to agree on, I just want to make sure everybody knows what you're voting on. If you vote to amend, you're voting to pretty much throw the rest of the contract out for now and then just do the engineer. Versus if you vote against it, then you are against doing this engineer only, and you'll be going right back to the original agreement and voting on that.
Can we amend the whole contract someplace in there to put an out clause in there if it turns out that the road building is gonna cost more than, let's give a realistic number of $45,000. Let's have a realistic number, then we can opt out of the contract. Is that possible?
Well, we can change it, but they might not sign it. I can't speak for them,
They're sitting
but
right
if
here.
they, well,
You don't have a contract.
I think with the amendment, Councilman Graham, we've got enough out that based on whatever the engineer comes up with, then we can make a decision to either say, okay, that's reasonable and let's go forward, or do something else.
But with the amendment, it basically throws the contract out. I'm trying to find a way to keep the contract, but still give the taxpayers of the city of Dillon something to say, oh, wait a minute, we can't do that.
But what about the taxpayers that live there, folks?
Well,
They are taxpayers. That is city.
Yes.
Y'all see dollar signs, but what about the folks that currently live there? These some of us that got annexed in 15 years ago, and I didn't have a damn say. I put in $1,500 into a brand new septic. Within 2 weeks, got pulled out. That is city, folks. Whether you agree or disagree. Those are taxpayers. I believe they're sitting in front of me, if you can't see. So yes, it's a burden, folks. Everything in this town is a damn burden. Idaho Street. I don't want my water rates to go up $10.50 a month, but I have to pay it. We all live here. Sometimes you gotta swallow hard and gulp and take a leap of faith. Call for the question.
okay,
So what are we voting on?
the amendment.
The amendment to the.
If the amendment is voted down, is there a?
It goes
set a
back
motion
to
on
the
the
original-
table.
it goes back to the original, it goes back to the original.
Which is to approve.
To approve your contract.
So if it's
Now, our contract, not your contract. And that still can be amended again if they so want.
So then Raymond could amend it at that point if you want.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor of voting on the amendment on hiring only the engineer and the surveyor for streets and storm drains, say aye.
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 Okay, and all those say nay?
Nay.
Or against it, say nay. Okay,
Nay.
okay, Don,
Nay.
Raymond,
Nay.
Dan,
Nay.
Nay.
okay, Mary Jo,
Aye.
Matt,
Nay.
Rich,
Aye.
Russ.
Nay.
Okay, amendment fails. Now we're back to the original contract. Do you want any further
Yes.
discussion?
Move to
Okay,
amend.
sorry, jump in.
Page 3. We go from 2.3 to 2.5. Y'all know me, I'm gonna find it.
Russ, you're my man.
Pretend it's not anybody, I dare you. It should be 2.5, should be 2.4.
Yeah.
And so forth.
I'm going through correcting them right now.
Thank you.
So do we think that the people of Dillon ought to have a chance to weigh in on this?
They do.
There is a public
There's
hearing.
public notice, all the previous meetings, this meeting.
Oh, boy.
Well, I would still like to try my motion to amend someplace in here. Maybe we'll put 2.4 in there.
Sure, just try to,
Wherever it's most appropriate to be, to put some kind of a cap on here or some, either a cap on it or some way that the city can opt out of the contract if the funds are not available to build the street. Or
How about putting it just that in between, right after 3.1, responsibility for cost? Would that be acceptable? I'm looking at Mr. Dolan right now.
No, yeah.
And at that point, you guys put a limit. Don't choose the 20, why don't you choose the 30?
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, a reasonable, because 25 for the streets, and what are you looking at for the sewer?
Well, I'm
Or
thinking
the storm drain.
I'm thinking it could be 5 to 6 for the storm drains, maybe even
So,
7, and 20 for the streets.
So 30.
30, okay, let's go 32, because
Okay. Limit at 32.
let's have a reasonable number.
And could you tell me where that 32,000 is in the budget? Where is that 32,000?
Well, if we're gonna have to fund it in the budget, but I'm hoping that realistically,
And water.
well, we gotta fix the streets. I mean, that's one thing. All of this, no matter what we do, they have a right to the street. We gotta fix the street. Now, do we have to put a storm drain in? Maybe not yet. But we gotta find the corners of where the streets are, we gotta find the grades. That's what this engineer's doing. We're gonna get a cost for the storm drain. We can't afford the storm drain, fine, we'll go down there and grade the streets, put gravel on, at least you'll have streets. When he starts building houses, and we put a SID on there, maybe we'll say, hey, the SID's gonna have to include the storm drain, sorry. You know, what's another $10,000 on a $200,000 SID?
You're gonna put gravel roads down there with those storm drains. Oh, Raymond.
It's better than not having no road with storm drains, a mud hole with storm drains. At least we got a road, we got to start. Once we get a start, a street down there will make it a whole lot more attractive for someone to want to come down and build a house on there. At least they can say, well, I can get there. And then there's a promise of a SID, we're gonna get a street. They're gonna look at a house and they're gonna say, oh, they're gonna pave this, it's gonna cost us another $2,000 a year probably, or whatever a SID is, but we're gonna have a nice brand new paved street.
What happens when the engineer comes in for your storm system and says, well, Raymond, if you put that street in at the wrong level, it's gotta be at a different conforming level, and so you got all those costs.
That's all supposed to be engineered. That's all part of the engineer, storm drains and streets. I'm just
Oh,
saying.
I thought you were.
No,
just
but
proposing.
if it comes in
But
and the storm
the
drain
street
is
in,
$200,000 by itself, and we can't afford to do the storm drain right now, we'll do the streets and leave the storm drain out.
You can do a French.
Sure, right, but what I'm saying is, we'll get it all engineered, we'll have a cost, we know how much money we gotta come up with. If we can't come up with the money, we'll opt out of the damn contract and say, we're sorry, we can't do it. Go down and grade the street and call it a street.
Okay, here's what I just threw together for your motion. How's that?
Sorry about that.
The cost of the street and stormwater infrastructure will be limited to,
32.
you want 30 or 45?
I'd say 45.
So suddenly we've gone from 20 to 45?
Unless approved by the city council.
Okay.
I thought it cost 20,000. How did we get to
Because we got a
45,000?
sewer storm drain, or a storm drain in it.
The stormwater, yeah.
Stormwater.
So you want to set it at 30, and then if it turns out more, we come to you guys for approval.
That's fine. Let's set it at 30, and if it's too much, we can always raise it or lower it or adjust it or whatever.
That is what your motion is. Is there a second to the motion?
Can you explain it one more time?
Okay.
What?
Just explain to me what you just talked about, I guess.
We added to it that the cost of the street and stormwater infrastructure improvement will be limited to 30,000 unless approved by the city council. That's the increase. So what they're saying is if it costs too much, then they gotta come back and we gotta decide what
So
we're
if
gonna
it's
do.
63,000, they come to the city council and they decide to approve or not.
Well, they'll decide something, I'm not sure what they'll decide, but
And then what are we talking about is cost? Because you talked about the street and alley department building, so we're talking about the engineering cost, and the
Yes.
survey cost, and then also what they, based on elevations, what they think the fill dirt or takeaway is gonna be, and then the gravel.
Yes.
And a peak.
Yes, and storm drains.
So we're set the grade so that we can start doing sidewalks and everything.
Yes,
So that we don't have to tear it out. We just-
yes, that's what this is. And that's why I asked for 30, because I'm thinking the engineering will be 5, storm drains will be about 6, and the streets, I chose 20, I really think it's less than that. Because when I do the streets, ripping out all the clay and putting in the pit run and then the road mix, I don't pay that much for those. And we're not doing is you got the base already set. So we just got.
Mr. Mayor?
We're gonna set the base elevation, then the pit run.
Right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Maybe I'm the only old man in the room, but we've been at it for over 3 hours, and unless I get a 5-10 minute recess pretty quick, you're going to be seeing things you don't want to see. Could I ask for a 5 to 10 minute recess?
Can you
please?
give us just a couple more minutes, Rich? I guess I'd like
Pardon
to
me?
be sure with the Wonderlands that you guys are okay with the change of this contract.
So the contract simply says it's above.
The cost of the street and stormwater infrastructure improvements will be limited to 30,000 unless the increasing costs are approved by the city council.
Okay. So
That's
you're
the
gonna hire an
addition.
engineer, if you think you can do it for 30,000, you're gonna start? Is there
Correct.
gonna be a?
That's correct.
If you get started and it's gonna be a little bit more, are we gonna stop or are we gonna have a little?
No, I think once you start, once the engineer gives an estimate, we're not gonna,
So you're signing the blank
Well, you're
check?
building.
Depending on what, I mean, the council will have to approve over the 30,000. If it's an ungodly amount that the city don't have money to do it, then we're gonna have to renegotiate, do something different. If it's less than the 30,000, we're gonna, this contract is full and board, and we're gonna do our stuff, you're gonna do your stuff, and 2 years we'll have water and whatever it is down there supposed to be done at the end of 2 years. The street will be there, your water and sewer will be there. Hopefully you'll have.
we might not have to
Hopefully
run
all your houses are
stormwater.
doing that.
When are you hiring an engineer?
Monday morning.
We'll talk. Well, the thing is, if they pass this with this correction, then if everybody signs it,
Yeah.
at that point, then I will be, you and I, or you two and I will be talking to an engineer
And setting that up.
and setting up as soon as they can to get them hired, if this is what it happens. And then we do the street and storm, tell us how much, and that's when they might freak or they might not. I don't think they will, but
Call for the question.
We haven't had a second.
Yeah, I already seconded it.
yeah, Don seconded it. Because Raymond made the motion and Don seconded it. Is there any further discussion?
Well, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that this is a project that will happen probably after Mayor Clacken has gone out of office, and it will saddle the next administration
It will
with
happen
this
next summer.
liability.
It'll happen this summer. Everything's loaded in. I don't know about the water sewer. Water sewers, I'm sure. You know, but the other. the
How many
street-
feet of road have you done in 7 years? Like 40 feet? And you're talking about doing 1,200 feet?
Well, most of the trouble was the pavement.
I can speak, the city come out and did about 2.5 blocks of Hall Road.
How long
2
did it
years
take
ago.
them? Yeah, how long did it take them?
About a day, day and a half. By the time they got the gravel hauled in, they built the base up about 6 inches, come down, graded it all off, they did. I don't know how long Hall Road is, but it's at least 2 blocks long, if not 3 or 4.
That's right, it's about the same length. All roads about the same length.
And then basically they had it done in a day, day and a half. It's not rocket science just to build a gravel road. And it's actually held up pretty good.
To build a good road that lasts
We're building a
a long
gravel
time
road.
is a very technical thing.
We agree, we're not building that road.
I just have one, we pay like maybe 2,000 now, our cows are down there and taxes are adjusted. Almost every single house, those ones we did on railroad even, I think they're 1,500 to 1,800 bucks per house in tax revenue. So we're worried about spending $30,000 for a road that's already in.
When if we build all the houses down there, even if it takes us 10 or 15 or 20 years, you're looking at 2,000 times like 40.
We don't
So-
get that 2,000.
You get a portion, and then you get $30 or $40 every month from everybody that's paying into the sewer systems. And then you get a little bit more for the lights, then you get a little bit more for the streets. So it's not,
It's a win-win.
Why don't we just keep talking, because I think one of our council members couldn't wait anymore.
Well, we called on permission, we didn't vote.
I was hoping we would rush to vote. And we could go home and look at that.
So since we've got just a moment, Mr. Winland, if you get approved, if everything comes to fruition and everything works in your favor and you get to begin the process of building, do you have a end of completion date in mind on when you'll have all of that done?
Yeah, it's right in here.
the way we wrote it, the water and sewer systems?
No, I mean, all of your homes are built and ready for purchase. When do you hope to complete?
I mean, I would hope as fast as possible if we have to put all the water and sewer infrastructure in at our cost. Nobody knows what the market's gonna do, but we're gonna start building buildings as soon as we have water and sewer.
After zoning approval.
Yes.
What's that?
Subject to.
Subject to zoning approval.
Subject to zoning approval, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And you know how much fun that is.
Or a,
There is a project schedule that's on 2.10.
Read that to me, will you? My computer seems to have locked out.
Matt, you are crazy. The owner and the city shall comply with the following schedules with respect to the West Side Addition infrastructure improvements. Work to construct the improvements shall commence within 2 years from the city granting final approval for the West Side Addition of improvements. All work to construct the improvements must be completed no later than 3 years from the date of this agreement. Warranty period to end no sooner than 1 year after final acceptance of all the improvements by the city and the owner.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, Rich is back. Are we ready?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, I asked what occurred while I was gone.
Did you wash your hands?
Since I was not granted a recess, no, I did not.
We added that right after 3.1 that you heard. Have you heard the last part was the cost of the street and stormwater infrastructure improvement will be limited to $30,000 unless the increasing costs are approved by the city council.
And what, did that pass?
No, that's what we're waiting for you to vote.
Wait for you, come back.
You haven't voted, okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna do it right now. I heard a call for question.
Yep.
Okay, all those in favor of approving this amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay.
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 Okay, Don.
Aye.
Raymond.
Aye.
Dan.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
Mary Jo.
Nay.
Russ.
Aye.
Matt.
Aye.
Rich.
Nay.
Okay, motion amendment passed. So now we're back to the original with this line added.
Call for the question.
To approve as amended.
As amended. This is now changed to as amended that was just voted on. All those in favor of approving this contract as amended, say aye.
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 Those against it, say nay.
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 Okay, I gotta get. Rich? Rich?
Nay.
Matt?
Aye.
Russ?
Aye.
Mary Jo?
Nay.
Bill?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Raymond?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Okay, amendment passes, or the motion passes. So now I can sign the contract, assuming that you, hoping you will not get turned off on it with the one change, so. We will talk tomorrow if you want to come in or Friday, and we can, let me get the changes. They'll come right first thing in the morning, I got to change this, but. Okay, anything else for street and alley? Please say Okay, next item, water and sewer, we are getting close.
Before you are the minutes from the Water and Sewer Committee from December 8th, we ask for your approval.
Move to approve. Second.
Moved by Bill, second, let's do Dan. Is there any discussion on the minutes?
Call the question.
Question's been called for to approve the December 8, 2020 meeting minutes of the Water and Sewer Committee. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Take that as a unanimous.
The water line project seems to be moving ahead admirably, and that completes my report.
Okay. Last item on the agenda, public comment on items of significant public interest not on the agenda and within the jurisdiction of the city.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Been moved by Dan, was it Russ?
Yeah, well.
Seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. I take